Chapter 260. On the 28th of the 12th lunar month, the sun rose. In the residence of the city lord of Wu City. Brother Zhao, long time no see. A square-faced man wearing a golden fur coat smiled as he welcomed Zhao Danshan, who had just arrived at Wu City. Behind the square-faced man was the city lord of Wu City. However, in this level of interaction, the city lord had no right to interfere. Brother Zhao, let the servants take care of the dark demonic horse. Come, follow me. Immediately, someone went to take the dark demonic horse. Zhao Danshan smiled and said, Brother Wang, how many men of Qinghu Island have arrived? He walked side by side with the man in golden cloak. The man in golden cloak said, 150 men of Qinghu Island have just arrived. Right now, they are all resting in the backyard, waiting for Brother Zhao's orders. Zhao Danshan frowned when he heard this. This time, Qinghu Island ordered the garrisons of the 6 counties around Wu City to send men over. Each garrison had to send 50 men. But now, only half of the men from 3 counties had arrived. Yes, it's still early. Zhao Danshan looked up at the sky and said, Last time, we realized that Ting Qingshan is very cunning in the dark. Zhao Danshan remembered clearly that in the Heavenly Flood Palace, when he and the King of Beasts Wu Ho were in front of the Golden Dragon Turtle, Ting Qingshan had been hiding in the corner and the two didn't notice him. Even Zhao Danshan was a bit afraid of his ability to hide in the dark. So, they had to act during the day. Immediately, Zhao Danshan and the man in golden cloak rushed to the backyard. Because the distance between the 6 counties and Wu City was not the same, the order of arrival was not exactly the same. Jia! Jia! More than 20 dazzling yellow warhorses with blood-red hooves galloped on the official road like 20 sharp arrows piercing through the air. These were the treading fire war horses from Rongzhou in the western region. They were considered the best horses in Rongzhou in the western region. They could travel nearly 2,000 li in a day. The distance traveled in a day usually referred to the distance that could be traveled in 10 to 12 hours during the day. After all, horses needed rest. Each of these war horses was worth over 10,000 taels of silver, and now there were more than 20 of them. There were very, very few forces in the world that could be so extravagant. Master, Wu City is in front. Yes. The one riding at the front was a handsome young man in black. His face was as cold as ice. He was Yen Danshan, who had been transferred to Yuzhou as a guardian and was in charge of the garrison of a county city. Yen Danshan received the news last night. He led 50 men and rushed to Wu City in Yuzhou as fast as he could. Therefore, Yen Danshan immediately used all the resources that Qinghu Island had and got 26 treading fire war horses. He was riding one alone, and the deputy protector of the station was also riding one. The others all rode in pairs on a treading flame war horse. The island is in such a hurry. What's going on? Yen Danshan was puzzled. But he didn't slow down, leading his troops into the city. Today, the guards at the city gate had clearly received instructions and did not stop them at all. At the same time, they even pointed the way to the city lord's mansion. Stop! Yen Danshan ordered. Nay, the 20 or so fire-treading war horses excitedly raised their front hooves and neighed in unison. All 50 men jumped down from their horses. Everyone, quickly follow me to the backyard. Just leave the war horses to us. The guards of the city lord's mansion had already opened the gate. Someone immediately went to lead the horses. Yen Danshan led his men into the city lord's mansion under the guidance of the guard. Yen Danshan looked at the guard who led the way and asked, How many people are here now? Qinghu Island has sent over 200 men. Your batch is here, but there is still one more batch. The guard smiled and said, The earliest batch arrived before the sun rose. Oh! Yen Danshan was shocked. It seems that the island has ordered many people to hurry over. After a while, they arrived at the backyard. The backyard was filled with people, but it was still relatively quiet. There were only some whispers, but no one dared to speak loudly. This was because in a pavilion not far away, Zhao Danshan and the Golden Man were sitting opposite each other. Yan Danshan, the protector of Wunan County, Yuzhou, greets the elder. Yan Danshan immediately walked over and bowed respectfully. Oh, Danshan, you were sent out? Zhao Danshan looked at the young man in front of him in surprise. Zhao Danshan remembered Yan Danshan very clearly. Firstly, Yan Danshan's performance in the past year was amazing. Secondly, Yan Danshan's name was too similar to his. Other than the surname, the pronunciation of their names was the same. One was Danshan and the other was Danshan. Zhao Danshan remembered this young man. Yes, elder. Yan Danshan said respectfully. Okay. Take your men and rest at the side. We will talk when the last batch arrives. Zhao Danshan ordered. Yan Danshan immediately left. Yan Danshan found a stool and sat down. Because there were too many people in the backyard, only those with high status could sit on stools. Most of the people stood at the side. Eldest marshal brother, why are you in such a hurry to gather the people from the 6 counties? And 50 people from each city. It must be something big. Even the people of Emperor Yu's hall are here. It might be related to Emperor Yu's hall or Ting Qingshan. Who knows? They will only tell us this secret when they are about to take action. Yan Danshan heard the conversation at the side and frowned slightly. It might really be related to Big Brother Ting Qingshan. Yan Danshan was grateful to Ting Qingshan. After all, Ting Qingshan saved his life. However, Yan Danshan was also very loyal to Qinghu Island. His martial arts were taught by Qinghu Island, and his teacher treated him very well. Therefore, he couldn't betray Qinghu Island and do something that would cause Qinghu Island to suffer a great loss. If this matter is really related to Ting Qingshan, I have to. Yan Danshan felt slightly anxious. At this moment, the sound of rapid footsteps rang. A large group of people came in from the entrance of the courtyard. Brother Zhao, all the people of Qinghu Island are here. The man dressed in gold in the pavilion in the backyard stood up and said with a smile. Zhao Danshan also stood up and looked at the 300 people in the backyard. The protector who led the last group of people also bowed respectfully. Protector Ing Xingjing of Huayang County of Yuzhou greets elder. Yes. Zhao Danshan held a pile of papers in his left hand and walked to the center. He stood up and looked around. Everyone, gather around me. Protectors, come to my side. Immediately, Yan Danshan, Ing Xingjing, Bai Bo, and the other protectors stood beside Zhao Danshan while the others surrounded him. This time, the purpose of Qinghu Island coming to Wu City is to capture Ting Qingshan alive. Zhao Danshan looked at the people around him. The people of Qinghu Island, who didn't know about this and only had some guesses, were slightly shocked. They found Ting Qingshan? Yan Danshan's heart trembled. Big trouble. If Ting Qingshan is alive, it will be a great shame to Qinghu Island. Tens of thousands of silver dragon soldiers of Qinghu Island died because of this despicable person. Even the young island lord was killed by him. Zhao Danshan looked at the people around him and said, "From now on, everyone, listen to me carefully." Zhao Danshan let go of the papers and with a bang sound, a pile of papers fell to the ground. Zhao Danshan picked up the paper on the surface and said, "This is a detailed map of the entire Wu City. It also points out the location of the inn where Ting Qingshan is staying. The 300 of you, what you need to do is, within a radius of 3 miles from the inn, every street and every alley was filled with men and horses. No matter where Ting Qingshan escapes to, our men will find him immediately. I want him to have nowhere to run." Zhao Danshan took out 6 maps from the pile of papers and handed them to the 6 protectors. "The 6 of you, I have drawn the streets on this map." Zhao Danshan had already planned everything when he was in the pavilion. These maps were naturally provided by Emperor Yu's hall. "Protector Bai Bo, your men are in charge of the first area on the south side of the inn. 50 men, watch 3 alleys and 1 street." "Yes." Protector Bai Bo immediately bowed and responded. Protector Zhu Yanfeng, your men are in charge of the second area on the east side of the inn. Watch all the places on the map carefully. Yes. Protector Yen Danshan, your men are in charge of the third area on the north side of the inn. Soon, the 6 protectors received their task. It was obvious that the 300 men were watching the area within a radius of 3 li with the inn as the center. Zhao Danshan continued, Ting Qingshan is now disguised as the merchant Qin Wei. These are the portraits of Qin Wei. Every protector take 3. Everyone under your command must remember the appearance of Qin Wei. The 6 protectors immediately took 3 portraits each. As they looked at the portraits, they were all shocked. This Ting Qingshan's disguise was too amazing. You don't need to capture Ting Qingshan. I will take care of it myself, Zhao Danshan said coldly. Once Ting Qingshan escapes, you must find his location. Of course, the possibility of him escaping to your location is not high. Remember, none of your men are allowed to enter the inn or get close to the inn. Zhao Danshan looked around and said coldly, with Ting Qingshan's ability, as long as he sees a few of you, he will easily find out that something is wrong. The people of Wu City and the people of Yangzhou were slightly different in terms of temperament and way of speaking. Each place had its own people. With Ting Qingshan's eyesight, if there were any strangers disguised as waiters or spying on them, he would definitely be able to find out. If anyone disobeys, the others can kill him immediately. Zhao Danshan said coldly, Now depart. Yes. The 6 protectors bowed and responded. Even though Yen Danshan was anxious, he couldn't think of a way to help Ting Qingshan because of Elder Zhao's arrangement. Zhao Danshan and the man clothed in gold left the city lord's mansion side by side and walked towards the inn. The 2 of them didn't seem to be moving very fast, but they were floating in the crowd and soon they were far away. They didn't walk along the main street. Instead, they walked through the alleys, crossed the river, and stealthily rushed to the inn at their fastest speed. Brother Zhao, I think you are making a big fuss out of nothing. This time, Ting Qingshan won't be able to escape. The man clothed in gold laughed. Zhao Danshan said coldly, There is no harm in being careful. If I let Ting Qingshan escape again, I won't have the face to go back and see the island lord and the others. Don't worry. There are 3 golden Dan innate elders of Emperor Yu's hall opposite the inn. The man clothed in gold laughed and said, In the entire Wu city, Emperor Yu's hall has arranged over 1,000 men to cover every corner of the city. It was Ting Qingshan who found you. He wanted to escape. With his speed, how could he escape from the 3 golden Dan innate elders of Emperor Yu's hall? If we didn't consider Qinghu Island, we would have asked Qinghu Island to kill Ting Qingshan. Emperor Yu's hall would have done it long ago. The man clothed in gold said confidently. Chapter 261. In the inn, Ting Qingshan walked down the stairs. Sir, what would you like to eat? The innkeeper behind the counter immediately asked with a smile. Ting Qingshan smiled and said, Give me a steamer of buns and a big bowl of soybean milk. With that, Ting Qingshan walked through the back door and entered the backyard of the inn. At this moment the backyard was very busy. Some were steaming buns, some were washing vegetables, and some were fetching water from the well. Ting Qingshan walked towards the stable and looked at the scarlet flame horse. Sir, your horse is fine. Don't worry. We are watching over it. A sturdy young man was shaking the iron wheel beside the well. After a while, a bucket of water was hoisted up. Okay. Ting Qingshan nodded with satisfaction. As a merchant, it would be too fake if he didn't care about the scarlet flame horse, which was worth thousands of silver taels. After looking around, Ting Qingshan walked back to the main hall of the inn. Sir, the buns and soybean milk are on the table, the innkeeper said enthusiastically. Ting Qingshan smiled and nodded. Simultaneously, he walked to the entrance of the inn and stretched his body. He casually glanced at the street. There were many pedestrians on the street and some of them were doing business. However, no one was sneaking around. Ting Qingshan said, "Innkeeper, it seems like today is a good day." When he returned to the table, Ting Qingshan ate the buns in 2 mouthfuls. Hohu, after finishing the big bowl of soybean milk, he rubbed his stomach comfortably and walked upstairs. However, he saw Uncle Wu coming down. "Uncle Wu? Where is brother Sun? I didn't see him last night." Young master went to visit his uncle yesterday, and was asked to stay there for a night. Uncle Wu smiled and said, however, young master should return to the inn today. He still needs to sell these goods. There are many things to do. Ting Qingshan then returned to his room. The sun rose and its warm rays shone on the street. 2 people suddenly appeared in the crowd on the street. One was wearing a golden robe, while the other was wearing a green robe, and had 1 arm. It was just that walking on the street was obviously different from ordinary people. The surrounding people also had good eyesight, and they all felt that these 2 were not ordinary people. All of them consciously stepped aside. "Brother Zhao, it's up to you now," the golden-robed man said with a smile. "You haven't forgotten the location of Ting Qingshan's guest room in the inn, right?" Zhao Danshan took out a piece of paper from his bosom. On the paper was a drawing of the layout of one of the floors of the inn. He marked one of the rooms. Zhao Danshan said, "On the 2nd floor of the inn, go up the stairs, the 3rd room towards the north. I remember it clearly." Putting away the paper, Zhao Danshan continued forward. The 2 of them soon arrived in front of the inn. Just then, 3 people walked out of the restaurant opposite the inn, all dressed in white leather robes. They were a thin silver-haired old man, a burly man, and a pretty young woman. The 3 of them stood side by side at the entrance of the restaurant, smiling at Zhao Danshan. Zhao Danshan's face twitched slightly as he nodded at the 3 of them. 3 Golden Dan innate experts. Even Du Xian, who is ranked 3rd in the heavenly ranking, has come. Zhao Danshan sighed to himself. In terms of the number of innate experts, Arhat experts, Mani Temple was undoubtedly number 1. However, among the 8 supreme sects in the world, Qing Hu Island and Xiao Yao Palace only had a history of over 1,000 years. Ever since Emperor Yu unified the land of the 9 prefectures, although the invention of paper only happened a few hundred years ago, for a long time there was a gap in history. However, everyone knew that since the birth of Emperor Yu's hall, many supreme sects had been born in the land of the 9 prefectures. For example, before Qing Hu Island, there was a supreme sect called the Sword Sect that had dominated Yangzhou for 800 years. However, after it was destroyed by Qing Hu Island, it had been more than 1,000 years since then, and the successor of the Sword Sect was probably gone. This was time. As time passed, no matter how great a sect was, it couldn't stay strong forever. In history, supreme sects were destroyed one after another. Now, the supreme sects that had a history of over 2,000 years were Mani Temple, Ying Family, Emperor Yu's Hall, Shooting Sun God Mountain, and Hong Tian City. Only the Ying family and Emperor Yu's Hall had a history of over 3,000 years. The Emperor Yu's Hall had a history of over 6,000 years. Many sects that were in the same era as Emperor Yu's Hall, 5,000, 4,000, or 3,000 years ago, were destroyed one after another. Therefore, forces like Qing Hu Island and Xiao Yao Palace were very afraid of Emperor Yu's Hall. It was the most ancient sect. How powerful was it? No one knew. However, at least, the sect had a long history. Generations of geniuses had left their own secret cultivation manuals. There would definitely be many mysterious secret cultivation manuals and more experts would be born. They could easily send out 3 Golden Dan innate experts. This was Emperor Yu's Hall. "We will stay here. It's up to Brother Zhao." The skinny elder lowered his voice and said. Zhao Danshan nodded. There were many people on the street and it was very noisy. As long as they didn't make any loud sounds, it would be hard for Ting Qingshan to recognize them. "Ting Qingshan, you won't be able to escape today." Zhao Danshan narrowed his eyes and entered the inn under the gazes of 1 emptiness Dan innate expert and 3 golden Dan innate experts of Emperor Yu's hall. "Sir, are you here to eat or stay?" the innkeeper shouted. Zhao Danshan glanced at him coldly. The innkeeper's heart trembled as he thought to himself, "Who is this?" Zhao Danshan scanned the hall on the first floor of the inn and immediately went up the stairs. Thud! 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 Zhao Danshan walked up step by step. In the room, Ting Qingshan sat cross-legged on the bed. "I feel a little uneasy. What's going on?" Ting Qingshan opened his eyes and glanced at the suitcase beside the bed. No one would know that the splitting mountain axe and the reincarnation spear are in the suitcase. This time, I didn't put on makeup like I did in the Great Yen Mountain. I only used charcoal. Instead, I took the materials I needed in Huafeng City and carefully put on makeup. This time, even if my parents came, they wouldn't be able to recognize me. Ting Qingshan didn't think that anyone would be able to recognize me. "Someone is going up the stairs?" Ting Qingshan heard the sound. "It's probably a guest staying here." Although he was a little vigilant, he didn't suspect anything. In the corridor, the handsome, silver-haired youth, Zhao Danshan, was wearing a green cloak. His right sleeve was empty, but his footsteps were natural and didn't have a trace of disguise. 1, 2, 3. Zhao Danshan's gaze instantly fixed on the room that Ting Qingshan was staying in. His face revealed a trace of malevolence. His left hand instantly turned into an afterimage as he reached for the sharp sword on his back. Clang! The sharp sword transformed into a dazzling radiance. The naked eye couldn't even see the body of the sword. Bang! The door of the entire room instantly turned into splinters of wood. The splinters were like hidden weapons that shot out in all directions and directly shot into the walls. The sound of tables and chairs shattering could be heard in the room. At the same time that the room door exploded, a blurry afterimage instantly rushed into the room. Ting Qingshan, who was originally sitting cross-legged on the bed, couldn't help but change his expression. "Ting Qingshan!" A ferocious shout came from the mouth of the blurry figure. Ting Qingshan's body immediately burst out with rays of fiery red light. His entire body was like a fire god. The rays of fiery red light were like countless arrows. In an instant, the solid wood bed that Ting Qingshan was sitting on, including the floor below, instantly turned into powder. Ting Qingshan himself grabbed the suitcase with one hand and quickly fell down. On the first floor of the inn, some customers were eating. The innkeeper looked up at the second floor uneasily. Suddenly, boom! The fiery red light shot down from above. At the same time, a fiery red figure also quickly shot down. The man whose entire body was burning with flames suddenly smashed onto the floor of the inn. The entire hall shook violently, leaving a huge pit and causing ugly cracks to appear on the floor. Another golden figure quickly descended. The sharp sword in his hand was like a lightning strike from the thunder god, shooting towards the figure shrouded in flames. So fast! Ting Qingshan had just retreated when he saw that resplendent sword. The sword light didn't cause any explosion, but because of this, Ting Qingshan was shocked. F***ck off! Ting Qingshan roared. The clothes on his right arm bulged as if there were snakes swimming inside it. He used the suitcase in his hand as a weapon and smashed it towards the sword light. Phew! The swift and fierce sword pierced onto Ting Qingshan's suitcase. One was a Golden Dan innate expert. The explosive force of his Golden Dan innate true origin was close to 800,000 gene. The other was an Emptiness Dan innate expert, but his physical strength was close to 700,000 gene. In addition, the explosive force was even greater. There was a Splitting Mountain axe in the suitcase. The Splitting Mountain axe that was refined by Emperor Yu for thousands of years. How could the Splitting Mountain axe be pierced through by a Golden Dan innate expert? The two terrifying forces collided head-on. Rumble! It was as if dozens of claps of thunder had exploded in the inn. The suitcase instantly exploded into ashes. Ting Qingshan even saw with his own eyes that a spherical shockwave formed in front of him. Immediately, the air vibrated violently and created a terrifying shockwave in the space. The shockwave spread out in all directions like ripples on the surface of water. Puff puff, the tables, chairs, bowls, and plates were instantly turned into ashes. The guests, waiters, and managers, who were still dumbfounded, were swept away by the shockwave and turned into a mist of blood. Boom! The four walls of the inn shattered into pieces. The shockwave even affected the surrounding buildings and the pedestrians on the street. At the same time, the three-story inn lost its support and crashed down with a loud rumble. On the street, the Emptiness Dan Innate Expert and the three Golden Dan Innate Experts of Emperor Yu's Hall were watching this scene with smiles. However, when they saw the terrifying shockwave created by the fight between the two, their facial expressions changed drastically. In order to create such a shockwave, the attacking power of the two should be on par. Rumble, the inn collapsed and the surrounding buildings collapsed. Many pedestrians on the street were either injured or killed. Cries for their parents could be heard. Quick, capture Ting Qingshan. The skinny silver-haired elder's facial expression changed as he roared. Immediately, the three Golden Dan Innate Experts transformed into three phantoms and flashed to the backyard of the inn. At this moment, the backyard that was affected by the shockwave was already filled with broken bricks and broken tiles. At this moment, Ting Qingshan held the splitting mountain axe in one hand and a section of the reincarnation spear in the other. The other section was tied to his body with the innate true origin. This splitting mountain axe is really powerful. When Ting Qingshan used it, he was secretly delighted. It is extremely hard. As expected of the treasure that could refine the elixir of the North Sea and support the heavenly flood palace for thousands of years. Zhao Danshan's all-out attack didn't even leave a mark on it. The surface of the splitting mountain axe was big. The splitting mountain axe could be used as a small shield and could easily protect the vital parts. Ting Qingshan, surrender. Zhao Danshan dashed over. Ting Qingshan's gaze swept across the distance. The three figures dashing over made his pupils shrink. Ting Qingshan immediately leaped up like a fish and dashed into the deep well in the backyard like a sharp arrow. At the same time, a boom sound rang out. The ground of the backyard suddenly arched, creating many ravines. At the same time, the deep well collapsed. "Ha, bastards of Qinghu Island, do you think you can catch me, Ting Qingshan?" An arrogant laughter spread out from the ground like a shock wave. It was like the angry laughter of the god of thunder, echoing in the sky above the entire Wu city. The hundreds of thousands of people in Wu city raised their heads and looked at the sky in astonishment. P.S. 2 chapters completed, call for vote. If you don't have monthly votes, recommendation votes are fine too. Recommendation votes are less now. Chapter 262. The place where the inn used to be was completely turned into ruins. The ground in the backyard of the inn cracked, forming a hideous ravine. It was as if a violent earthquake had happened. The deep well collapsed and was completely buried by the shattered rocks and soil. He jumped into the well and escaped? The three Golden Dan Innate Experts of Emperor Yu's Hall and Zhao Danshan were stunned when they saw this. No one expected. Ting Qingshan actually jumped into the well. The bottom of the well wasn't very big. Zhao Danshan and the others could easily find Ting Qingshan if they went in. "Ha, bastards of Qinghu Island, do you think you can catch me, Ting Qingshan?" The roar came from underground. "You're courting death." Zhao Danshan's face turned ugly. He instantly transformed into a blurry golden figure and leaped towards the deep well. At the same time, the sword in his hand transformed into a huge sword and pierced towards the deep well that was buried by rocks and soil. Boom! A tunnel with a circumference of 3 zhang was blasted out and reached the bottom of the well. "Let's go down." The skinny silver-haired elder frowned and shouted. Immediately, the burly man and the beautiful young woman rushed into the well with the old man. At the bottom of the well, voila, the water in the well had already become muddy. Where did he escape to? Zhao Danshan's entire body was enveloped by the light of the innate true origin. He was submerged in the well water. The bottom of the well wasn't very deep. The walls around the bottom of the well had already cracked. Behind the walls was a thick layer of soil, as well as some small pieces of broken rocks. Some of the underground water was passing through the rocks and soil with pores in them. Break! Zhao Danshan's face turned cold. The sword in his hand shone brightly and transformed into huge sword lights that pierced towards the bottom of the well. In front of a Golden Dan innate expert, even the rock layers would shatter. Not to mention the soil. Ordinary people dug wells in the soil layer. They hadn't even reached the deeper rock layer. Boom! 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 The sword lights instantly blasted the surrounding soil and revealed a shockingly deep pit. Zhao Danshan immediately looked around the deep pit, trying to find some clues. But immediately afterward, the soil that had been blasted to the ground collapsed again, burying more than half of the original pit. The water in the underground flowed slowly. Brother Zhao, did you find Ting Qingshan? The three men of Emperor Yu's hall arrived beside Zhao Danshan. No. Zhao Danshan frowned and looked around. We're only a breath slower than this Ting Qingshan, but why can't we see any trace of him? Brother Zhao's sword light should have been able to discover his track. The beautiful young woman frowned as she looked around. This well isn't deep enough. The surroundings were filled with mud, and the slightest movement would cause the mud to collapse. If it were a rock, we would have found him long ago. The thin old man lowered his voice and said, Everyone, don't panic. The underground is filled with thick soil. If Ting Qingshan wanted to drill into the ground to escape, he would definitely make a sound. But we didn't hear any obvious sounds underground. It's just the sound of underground water flowing through the soil and rock. The strong old man frowned and said, Humph. Zhao Danshan humphed and said, We're only a breath slower than him. He must be somewhere in the vicinity of the underground. He's afraid that we would discover the sound of him breaking through the soil and finding his location. So, he must be motionless. He's not making any sound. Brother Zhao is right. If we leave now, we'll be deceived by him. The thin silver-haired old man nodded. At the bottom of the well, the four Golden Dan innate experts pricked up their ears and listened carefully, not missing any sound. We have to trouble Brother Du and the others to catch Ting Qingshan as soon as possible, Zhao Danshan said in a low voice. Brother Zhao, just tell us. We'll definitely help. The thin silver-haired old man, Du Xian, said in a low voice, and this time, Emperor Yu's hall and Qing Hu Island have so many men. Under the heavy encirclement, if we still let Ting Qingshan escape, I'm afraid that the whole world will laugh at us. Yes. Zhao Danshan nodded. When he thought of how Ting Qingshan shouted, Bastards of Qing Hu Island, do you think you can catch me, Ting Qingshan? Everyone in Wu City must have heard that voice. This Ting Qingshan is really... Zhao Danshan thought to himself, everyone in Wu City will know when he shouted. I can't hide it even if I want to. Zhao Danshan immediately tried to calm himself down. Let's split up. Zhao Danshan said in a low voice, The four of us, I'll go in the front. Brother Du, you three will be responsible for the back and the left and right side. The four of us will advance slowly in four directions. At the same time, you can use your innate true origin to pierce through the soil and look for traces of Ting Qingshan. Also, keep your voice low. The innate true origin that pierced through the soil must be restrained. Don't make any loud noises. Okay. The three Golden Dan innate experts of Emperor Yu's hall were very straightforward. He must be within 100 zhang. The four of us should be careful. Search the surroundings, up and down. If he doesn't move, we will definitely find him. If he moves, he will definitely make a sound. Once he makes a sound with our speed, we will definitely be able to catch him. Zhao Danshan was very confident. Let's go. Immediately, Qing Hu Island and Emperor Yu's Hall joined hands. The 4 Golden Dan innate experts spread out and moved forward step by step with a glowing shield around their bodies. They didn't dare to move too fast and tried to be as quiet as possible. Ting Qingshan, you can't escape. Zhao Danshan roared furiously in his heart. Streaks of golden light shot downwards, upwards, forwards, and straight ahead like arrows. Because the innate true origin was restrained, only a hole as thick as a baby's arm appeared in every sword light. Every sword light could pierce through a distance of 20 to 30 zhang. The 4 Golden Dan innate experts obviously wanted to search the surrounding area of 100 zhang. This was easy for them. At this moment, about 30 zhang to the left of Du Xian, an expert of Emperor Yu's hall, Ting Qingshan's entire body was enveloped by a fiery red glowing shield. Because of the distance, Ting Qingshan didn't hear the conversation of the 4 in a low voice. Ting Qingshan frowned. Pooh, pooh, pooh. A very soft sound rang again and again. They are searching underground? They should be using the innate true origin to pierce through the soil. They want to find me. A smile appeared on Ting Qingshan's face. Zhao Danshan, if you were alone, I still want to play with you a little longer. However, judging from the speed of the 3 helpers, they are also Golden Dan innate experts. They are most likely the men of Emperor Yu's hall. That's right. The splitting mountain axe belongs to Emperor Yu. It's normal for the men of Emperor Yu's hall to want it. Pooh, pooh. The sound of piercing through the soil was getting closer and closer. Looks like they are going to find me soon. I don't want to play with you guys anymore. A smile appeared on Ting Qingshan's face. The fiery red light shield that enveloped Ting Qingshan instantly turned into the shape of a bullet. The innate true origin changed according to Ting Qingshan's will and easily turned into the shape of a bullet. At the same time, there was a bulging spiral structure on the surface of the bullet-shaped light shield. It looked like the light shield on the surface of Ting Qingshan's body had already turned into the drill of an electric drill. Ting Qingshan's hands and feet were outside the light shield. Ting Qingshan's hands and feet were comparable to treasures like dark steel. For a moment, Ting Qingshan was like a reptile, using both his hands and feet. Bang! Bang! Ting Qingshan stomped on the ground with both of his legs and immediately created a strong force. With this force, the bullet-shaped electric drill immediately dashed out. Phew! Ting Qingshan was like a beam of flowing light. He instantly pierced through the soil and disappeared. You want to catch me? Dream on! Ting Qingshan's speed in the soil was astonishing. In his previous life, an electric drill could easily drill through steel plates, rocks, and so on. The electric drill formed by Ting Qingshan's innate true origin could drill through the soil. Of course, it was easier. Because Ting Qingshan's huge electric drill was in the shape of a bullet, the resistance was extremely low. The spiral structure could also borrow the strength of the soil to move forward quickly. With the help of the legs, the speed was even more astonishing. As for the most energy-consuming part of the electric drill, it was the tip of the reincarnation spear. With the tip of the spear made of 10,000 years cold steel, it was of course easy for it to pierce through the soil. Like the pangolin, wild beasts that can move quickly in the soil. Or some animals that are good at escaping underground. They have the advantage of size. Like the pangolin, it has a cone-shaped body. However, the most suitable shape to move through the soil is the shape of a streamlined electric drill. At this moment, Ting Qingshan was extremely fast in the mud. Even Ting Qingshan didn't feel any resistance. Ting Qingshan is here. The skinny silver-haired elder suddenly shouted. Phew! 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 Immediately, Zhao Danshan and the other 2 Golden Dan innate experts of Emperor Yu's hall rushed over. At this moment, the skinny silver-haired elder, Du Xian, followed the sound and immediately chased. After a while, the 4 gathered. Where is he? Zhao Danshan and the other two looked at Du Xian. Du Xian shook his head and said in disbelief, "The sound was very loud just now. I immediately rushed over as fast as I could. However, I realized that the sound was getting further and further away from me. I couldn't even hear the sound just now." Impossible! How could his speed be so fast? Zhao Danshan's facial expression changed drastically. "I also heard the sound just now. It was very loud." The pretty lady frowned and said, "However, I soon couldn't hear it anymore. On land, their speed might be faster than Ting Qingshan. However, the difference was huge underground. These people unwillingly searched in the mud for a long time before they chose to give up. At the bottom of the well, Zhao Danshan and the other three returned. Zhao Danshan's facial expression was gloomy. They didn't catch Ting Qingshan. It would be too embarrassing if news of this spread. Ha ha! Suddenly, loud and clear laughter came from outside the well. The laughter echoed in the heavens and the earth. Zhao Danshan, the other three should be the law-enforcing elders of Emperor Yu's hall. Ha ha, Zhao Danshan, if you want to catch me, go back and train for another 50 years. The facial expressions of Zhao Danshan and the other three changed drastically. It's Ting Qingshan. Zhao Danshan immediately rushed out of the well. Where did Ting Qingshan go? Du Xian and the other two were also very shocked. They quickly rushed out of the well as well. A moment after the four left the well, a figure slowly appeared in the muddy well water. The figure was originally blurry, but it quickly solidified. This person was wearing a long black cloak and had long black hair. He carried a godly sword in a black sheath on his back. Under his white eyebrows, a pair of eyes were filled with surprise as he thought to himself, Ting Qingshan's ability to hide and escape is really amazing. Even the 4 Golden Dan innate experts couldn't find him. Immediately, the figure flashed and disappeared into thin air. P.S. Chapter 1 is here. Chapter 263. At the bottom of a well in a courtyard in the west of Wu City, Ting Qingshan was here. Zhao Danshan, if you want to catch me, go back and practice for another 50 years. After shouting, Ting Qingshan immediately drilled into the soil and continued moving forward. In the mud, Ting Qingshan was not in a hurry. However, the bullet-shaped light shield on Ting Qingshan's body was no longer spiraling. Using the innate true origin to change the shape of my body. Looks like it's not what I thought. Ting Qingshan was very clear that maintaining the innate true origin light barrier would not consume much innate true origin. Of course, the innate true origin had to be very close to the body and not too far away. The further he went, the more quintessential essence he would have to consume. The light barrier could not be too big. The bigger it was, the more energy it would consume. In fact, Ting Qingshan could guess all of this. But Ting Qingshan did not think of one thing. I just want to borrow the power of the earth through the spiral structure. But I didn't expect that it would consume even more true essence. Ting Qingshan originally wanted to design the light shield around his body as an electric drill. But since it was an electric drill, once it broke through the ground, the thread would also rotate. Although it was spinning by borrowing force, but the spirals were the shapes formed by the innate true origin. When it was not moving, Ting Qingshan could easily maintain the existence of this thread. However, when the thread started to spin violently, the amount of innate true origin that Ting Qingshan had to consume to keep the thread from dissipating became even more shocking. This forced Ting Qingshan to dissipate the thread structure. It returned to the shape of a streamlined bullet. This innate true origin transformation. I have to test it out and find out its advantages and disadvantages. Ting Qingshan understood a few points. 1. The smaller the light shield, the less energy it consumes. 2. The closer the light barrier is to the body, the less true essence it consumes. 3. The object formed by the innate true origin should be fixed and unchanging. Once he started moving violently, the consumption of his innate true origin would immediately increase. For example, this electric drill. Once the thread was drilled, the consumption of true essence immediately increased. As for the object formed by the innate true origin, there were two situations when it moved. One was moved by an external force. For example, this thread was caused by the movement of the soil. For example, when Ting Qingshan turned into a fish, the fish tail was swung by Ting Qingshan's body strength and legs. The main driving force was his legs. Under such circumstances, the consumption of innate true origin was rather shocking. However, he could still barely maintain it. In another situation, such as when he transformed into a fish, he swung his fish tail without using the strength of his legs. On the other hand, it was purely controlling the innate true origin. Another example was this human-shaped electric drill. If the feet of the drill formed a propeller and let the propeller rotate, it would create an impact force. If he didn't rely on Ting Qingshan's legs to borrow strength, controlling the innate true origin outside of his body would consume a lot of innate true origin. It could be said that the innate true origin in Ting Qingshan's body would be completely exhausted in a few breaths' time. I already knew the first and second points. The third point was that it was best for the light shield to be fixed outside the body. If he was forced to move, it was best to use his physical strength, not true essence. If he were to use his true origin with this rate of consumption, he would be a Golden Dan innate expert. I estimate that it will be used up in the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Ting Qingshan sighed to himself. Innate experts were very frugal with their innate true origin. That was because once the innate true origin was exhausted, he was a Golden Dan innate expert. Without his innate true origin, he was just an ordinary person who could eliminate air resistance. The air resistance for a swing of 1 to 2,000 gene of strength was not great. Even if it was eliminated, the increase in strength wouldn't be much. Therefore, without innate true origin, an innate master was just an ordinary person. Last time, the light shield around my body turned into a fish. His speed was extremely fast, and he arrived at the bottomless pit in the time it took to brew a cup of tea. But at that time, my innate true origin was almost exhausted. Ting Qingshan pondered, but if I just maintain the light barrier and keep it fixed, I'll be fine even if I hold it for 2 hours. Ting Qingshan was very clear. The transformation of the light barrier was very important to him. He had to study it thoroughly. I don't care if I turn into a fish or a bullet. The main driving force is my legs. Ting Qingshan smiled. With my control over my body, my muscles can rest at any time. My endurance is much longer than those innate experts. Facing 10,000 heavily armored soldiers, even a Golden Dan innate expert would be exhausted to death if he didn't escape. But Ting Qingshan could kill them one by one. If he spent more time, he could kill them all. This was the difference between innate true origin and physical strength. Now, I can turn into a fish in the water. The duration isn't long, but I can swim over 10 li in the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. If I'm in the soil or rocks underground, I can turn into the shape of a bullet. Using the tip of the reincarnation spear as the tip of the bullet, I can break through the soil and rock. I can use my legs to borrow strength, no matter how long it takes. If I jump off a cliff, I can completely spread my hands and form a pair of fake wings to reduce the speed of falling. This way, I will dare to jump no matter how high the cliff is. If I want to fly like a bird, Ting Qingshan frowned. Flying was indeed difficult. Even if the innate true origin surrounded his hands and formed a pair of wings. But who had ever seen someone who could fly just by putting wings on their hands? If this was the case, everyone in the modern society in his previous life could fly. There are many types of birds in the sky. Some birds can fly and they can fly very fast. But some birds can only barely hover. Also, ducks and geese have wings, but they can't fly at all. Ting Qingshan thought carefully. But after thinking about it, Ting Qingshan realized, having wings doesn't mean you can fly. Even the planes in my previous life only had wings to maintain balance. I have never seen any aircraft that flies like a bird by flapping its wings. Ting Qingshan suddenly understood that flying wasn't that simple. If it was simple, you could fly with wings and a strong driving force. But why didn't there be any aircraft that flapped its wings? It seems that it will be very difficult for me to fly, Ting Qingshan thought. First of all, when I'm in the air, I have to at least stay horizontal. This is the so-called maintaining a stable center of gravity. But it's very difficult for a human body to maintain a stable center of gravity in the air like a bird. When a bird flies, when it flaps its wings downwards, there will be an upward force. But when it flaps upwards, there will be a downward force. If I want to fly, the upward force must be greater than the downward force. Therefore, the wings can't be fixed. The fixed wings formed by my innate true origin definitely won't work. Ting Qingshan shook his head as he thought about it. There's also the human body's gravity, my weight and weapons. If I want to be so heavy, the upward force must be strong enough. I'm afraid I will need a very large pair of wings. But such a large pair of wings will consume even more innate true origin. After thinking about it for a while, Ting Qingshan shook his head. Ting Qingshan was completely stumped by the few problems that he had found. Just the wings that were formed had to be constantly stretched, and this would consume innate true origin. In a few breaths, the innate true origin would be used up. Also, the large wings would produce an astonishing amount of energy. If I want to fly, there will be even more problems. After all, in my previous life, even nuclear weapons were created. However, I have never heard of an aircraft that can fly by flapping its wings. Ting Qingshan sighed. Compared to other people in the land of the 9 prefectures, his thoughts were more advanced. However, in terms of theoretical knowledge, he couldn't be compared to the scientists in his previous life. Actually, Ting Qingshan didn't know that the reason why birds could fly wasn't just because of what he thought. In fact, it was closely related to the internal structure of the bird's body, its breathing system, and so on. It was very complicated. Even the wings weren't formed by Ting Qingshan's innate true origin. The structure of the wings of a bird that could fly was also very complicated. This time, I can escape with my life. I have to rely on the innate true origin to change its shape. I can't fly. But at least, in the water, in the mud, on the cliff, and so on, my ability to survive will increase greatly. Ting Qingshan was very confident. I have to think about it carefully. Maybe there are other ways to use it. However, just by being faster in the mud, I can easily escape from their pursuit. The incident that happened in Wu City on the 28th of the 12th month of the lunar calendar. The news spread at an astonishing speed. One should know that the 2 shouts of Ting Qingshan. "Haha, bastards of Qinghu Island, you want to catch me, Ting Qingshan?" Zhao Danshan. The other 3 should be the law-enforcing elders of Emperor Yu's hall. "Haha, Zhao Danshan, if you want to catch me, go back and practice for another 50 years. These 2 shouts were heard by everyone in Wu City. Emperor Yu's hall and Qinghu Island couldn't hide it even if they wanted to. That was Ting Qingshan, a genius who betrayed the Guiyuan sect. After Qinghu Island tricked Qinghu Island and many other sects in the Great Yen Mountain. Qinghu Island chased Ting Qingshan everywhere. This had already caused a lot of discussion in the world. Reaching the true Dan of the innate realm at the age of 17 was even more shocking. However, no one expected. Zhao Danshan of Qinghu Island and the 3 law-enforcing elders of Emperor Yu's hall joined hands and still let Ting Qingshan escape in Wu City. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. As the saying goes, good news doesn't go out, but bad news spreads 1,000 miles. The news of the high and mighty Emperor Yu's hall and Qinghu Island being humiliated spread even faster than the so-called bad news. In the center of the world, one of the two great imperial cities, Yu City. Although Imperial Qin City was also an imperial city, because it was located in Yongzhou in the northwest, and because of the 3,000-li Qinling Mountains, not many people went to Imperial Qin City. However, the natives of Yongzhou felt proud of Imperial Qin City, which had the largest population. But in reality, Yuzhou was in the center of the 9 prefectures, and Yu City was in the center of Yuzhou. It was the absolute center of the world, and the businesses here were flourishing. Countless people came and went every day. On the 30th day of the 12th lunar month, the annual sacrifice, noon. Old brother, you're wrong. Who is Ting Qingshan? A true Dan innate expert at the age of 17. This time, Qinghu Island only sent Zhao Danshan. Why didn't they send other true Dan innate experts to help? As far as I know, Ting Qingshan has the ability to kill ordinary true Dan innate expert. Therefore, in order to kill him, one must be a golden Dan innate expert. A skinny old man was talking loudly in the restaurant. The 3 law-enforcing elders sent by Emperor Yu's hall should also be golden Dan innate experts. The skinny old man laughed and said, I didn't say that. Rumors have spread that one of them is the expert of the heavenly ranking, Du Xian. 4 golden Dan innate experts besieged Ting Qingshan, but he escaped. TSK. Ting Qingshan is really ruthless. He offended all of the 8 supreme sects in the world. If he wants to offend, he should offend all of them. If I can offend the entire world one day, it will be worth it even if I die. Plus, even the 4 golden Dan innate experts couldn't stop Ting Qingshan. Who can catch him? Just watch. The 8 supreme sects definitely won't be able to catch Ting Qingshan. This year's New Year was too lively. When the news spread, everyone was talking about it. The 8 supreme sects couldn't stop him even if they wanted to. After all, the law doesn't punish the masses. Everyone in the world was talking about it? What could they do? In a corner of the restaurant, 2 middle-aged men dressed in ordinary clothes were sitting there, listening to others talking about Ting Qingshan. Their faces were filled with excitement. These 2 men were the people of Guiyuan sect stationed in Yu City. This happened on the 28th of the 12th lunar month. Today is the yearly sacrifice. It has only been 2 days, but the news has already spread here. Commander, he is too powerful. These 2 men were very excited. In their hearts, Ting Qingshan would always be the commander of Guiyuan sect. When we return, we will tell Lord. Within the sect, this news must be sent back as soon as possible. I wonder what the sovereign would do if he knew. The 2 men couldn't bear it anymore. They immediately paid the bill and rushed to the station. Update complete, Tomato shouted. I want recommendation votes. I also want monthly votes. Vote for me. Chapter 264. The sky was as blue as a porcelain plate, and the white clouds were like silk. Although the battle in Wu City had caused Qinghu Island to become the topic of gossip among the residents of the land of the 9 prefectures, the internal affairs of Qinghu Island were still the same as before. Because of this ridicule, many disciples of Qinghu Island worked even harder. They were one with Qinghu Island. If Qinghu Island was humiliated, they would be humiliated. Qinghu Island was respected, and all the disciples would be proud when they went out. The teachers were strict, and the disciples cultivated hard. Qinghu Island was unprecedentedly united. At the same time, they hated Ting Qingshan to the core. Qinghu Island, Dragon Bolt Pavilion. Island Lord. Gu Yong came to the Dragon Bolt Pavilion and looked at the golden-haired man who was meditating cross-legged. That man was the current island lord of Qinghu Island, Taipan. Taipan smiled and said, Senior Marshal Brother is here. Please sit. Island Lord, it has been half a month since the battle in Wu City. Do you have any news about Ting Qingshan? Gu Yong stared at Taipan. Taipan frowned and looked at Gu Yong before saying, Ever since the battle in Wu City, Ting Qingshan escaped. Although there have been many news about Ting Qingshan, none of it is true. Until now, no one knows where Ting Qingshan is hiding. Is he still pretending to be a merchant, or is he hiding in a mountain corner? No one knows. With his disguising ability, it is extremely difficult to find him again. It is as difficult as ascending to heaven. Last time, it was because a godly thief found the godly axe and reincarnation spear. Only then did he find Ting Qingshan. Ting Qingshan must have learned from his mistakes. He will not make the same mistake again. Gu Yong's face darkened. He said in a deep voice, "Island Lord, does Qing Hu Island allow Ting Qingshan to be free and unfettered?" Tai Pan's face darkened and he shouted coldly, "Senior Marshal Brother." Gu Yong froze. This junior marshal brother Tai Pan was usually very respectful to him. Although Gu Yong was no longer the island lord, he had been for many years. Subconsciously, he still thought that his status was high. "Junior marshal brother, what do you want to say?" Gu Yong frowned. Tai Pan was a little angry as he glared at him. Like an angry lion, he said, "Senior brother, you are the most talented in our generation. I reached the Golden Dan innate realm a few years later than you. His strength is much weaker than yours. Even now, you still care about that Ting Qingshan? That's just a small matter. So what if the people of the world think so? That was the extent of it. Who in this world dares to look down on Qing Hu Island?" This time, when Elder Zhao went to Yuzhou, didn't Emperor Yu's Hall receive him seriously? Why? It's because we have Grandmaster. As for Grandmaster, there are only a few decades left before he reaches his 500-year-old limit. Senior Marshal Brother, aren't you worried? Tai Pan's eyes reddened. Once Marshal Ancestor reaches the end of his lifespan, he will return to heaven. Qing Hu Island doesn't have any emptiness realm expert. So what? 1,000-year foundation destroyed in a day? Ting Qingshan, it's just a small matter, an insignificant small matter. An emptiness realm expert was the most important thing. Senior Marshal Brother, it has been 2 months since you abdicated. But seeing you like this, I'm really anxious. Gu Yong was speechless. Right, Ting Qingshan only slightly damaged Qing Hu Island's reputation. However, Qing Hu Island's status was not affected at all. The foundation of Qing Hu Island, the heaven of Qing Hu Island, was the emptiness realm expert. Without an emptiness realm expert, their heaven would collapse. The Gui Yuan sect has an emptiness realm expert. Zhuge Yuanhong's improvement is even more shocking. It seems that Zhuge Yuanhong might be able to step into the emptiness realm one day. In a few decades or 100 years, the Gui Yuan sect will have 2 emptiness realm experts. Qing Hu Island won't have any. By then, Qing Hu Island will follow the footsteps of the Sword sect from 1,000 years ago. By then, Qing Hu Island will be annihilated and will no longer exist. Senior Marshal Brother, compared to that, Ting Qingshan's matter is nothing. Gu Yong was silent. His facial expression changed drastically. It was obvious that he was struggling. After a long time, Gu Yong's facial expression returned to normal. He bowed and said, "Island Lord, my eyes were blinded by anger. From today onwards, I will no longer interfere with the pursuit of Ting Qingshan. I will focus on cultivation in order to reach the emptiness realm." Hearing this, the Island Lord Tai Pan smiled. After the battle in Wu City, Ting Qingshan first went to the Iron Saber mountain range in Yuzhou to try to change the innate true origin. He studied it for 10 days. He had accumulated a lot of experience, so Ting Qingshan was confident. Even if he couldn't defeat a Golden Dan innate expert, but at least he could escape. Soon after, Ting Qingshan left the Iron Saber mountain range and hurried north. Every night, Ting Qingshan would ride a Dark Veins horse he bought and gallop on the official road. With Ting Qingshan's night vision, it was no problem for him to travel at night. He could travel over 1,000 li in one night. With this speed, Ting Qingshan could cultivate on the horse. He didn't waste any time. During the day, Ting Qingshan would go to the forest and rest in an unfrequented place. At the same time, he could cultivate and practice the 3 postures. Just like that, he went out at night. Half a month after the battle in Wu City, Ting Qingshan only took 5 days to leave Yuzhou and enter the northernmost part of the land of the 9 prefectures, Yanzhou. White Lotus City, a small city in the northern part of Yanzhou. A man walked in front of the Wanxiang Tower. This man wore a simple shirt, his hair was loose, and he carried a big bag on his back. A curved saber hung on his waist. This man stopped in front of the Wanxiang Tower. He raised his head and looked at the 3 golden words, Wanxiang Tower. The Wanxiang Tower exists in both Yi City and White Lotus City. In the entire land of the 9 prefectures, every city probably has a Wanxiang Tower. The Wanxiang sect never contended for hegemony in the world and kept a low profile. However, in terms of wealth, the sum of all the Wanxiang towers in the world would be a terrifying amount. Among the 8 supreme sects in the land of the 9 prefectures, many sects haven't existed as long as the Wanxiang sect. This is a sect with a long history. I'm afraid there are many experts. Ting Qingshan sighed. They were rich and had people all over the land of the 9 prefectures. They had disciples everywhere. They didn't compete for hegemony, so they naturally kept a lot of strength. Just how strong was such a sect? It was hard to know. Please unload your weapon before entering the Wanxiang Tower. The 2 girls at the door reached out their hands at the same time. Ting Qingshan handed over the curved saber on his waist and walked inside. The 2 disciples of the Wanxiang sect didn't stop Ting Qingshan, even though there were weapons in Ting Qingshan's bag. However, they didn't know. Secondly, even if they knew, they couldn't force the customer to open the bag. That would be too much. The interior of the Wanxiang Tower was extremely spacious. Earth ranking, Hidden Dragon ranking, Young Phoenix ranking. Ting Qingshan looked at the first 3 books on the counter. When he entered the city for the first time, he bought an Earth ranking from the Wanxiang Tower. Because of that, he learned a lot about the land of the 9 prefectures. Waiter, give me one of these 3 books, Ting Qingshan said. Hidden Dragon ranking and Young Phoenix ranking are each 100 taels of silver. Earth ranking is 10 taels of silver. The waiter at the counter said. Ting Qingshan took out a stack of silver notes and took out 3 100 taels of silver. When the waiter saw the stack of silver notes in Ting Qingshan's hands, he was a little jealous and sighed to himself. You can't judge a book by its cover. It looks like it's an old man, but it doesn't have much silver. It looks ordinary, but it's a stack. At the same time, he took out 3 books and gave them to Ting Qingshan along with 90 taels of silver. Although there was a handling fee for exchanging silver notes, merchants still liked them. Ordinary civilians didn't like them. Do you have heavenly ranking? Ting Qingshan asked. No, it's not for sale. The waiter shook his head. Ting Qingshan took the 3 books and went to the counter selling materials. His eyes instantly fixed on the star pattern steel. Give me 500 grams of star pattern steel. As he said this, he took out 10 100 taels of silver notes from the stack of silver note. 500 grams? Star pattern steel? The waiter at the counter was slightly surprised. Star pattern steel, which was worth more than gold, was rarely bought. The waiter quickly took 500 grams of star pattern steel and carefully weighed it before giving it to Ting Qingshan. 500 grams of star pattern steel was equivalent to 500 grams of gold, which was 1,000 taels of silver. Ting Qingshan put the star pattern steel and the 3 books into his bag. With these star pattern steel, I can repair the reincarnation spear's shaft. If I continue north, I will soon reach the Great Prairie. In the Great Prairie, it will be harder to find a blacksmith to buy star pattern steel. White Lotus City was less than 1,000 li away from the Great Prairie. With Ting Qingshan's speed, he could reach it in a day. White Lotus City, in the backyard of the Yang clan blacksmithing shop. Old craftsman Lu, this is Mr. Qing. He is willing to pay a large sum of money for old craftsman Lu to repair weapons. A slightly plump, middle-aged man wearing a felt hat spoke to a white-haired, sturdy old man wearing a round hat. Old craftsman Lu looked at Ting Qingshan and asked, Mr. Qing, what kind of weapon do you want to repair? Craftsman Lu, can you repair star-pattern steel weapons? Ting Qingshan asked. Star-pattern steel? Old craftsman Lu laughed and said, that's not difficult. However, it depends on how damaged your weapon is before I can fix the price. Ting Qingshan said directly, the commission is 1,000 taels of silver. I want you to repair it immediately. Sure, no problem. Old craftsman Lu's eyes immediately lit up. Even if it was to forge a star-pattern steel weapon, the price of 1,000 taels of silver was already very high. Not to mention, it was just for repairing. A moment later, in the craftsman's shop, old craftsman Lu looked at the reincarnation spear that Ting Qingshan handed over and his facial expression changed drastically. This is, teacher, isn't this weapon? The disciple beside him also widened his eyes. The news of the capture of Ting Qingshan spread like wildfire. The information about the reincarnation spear also became more detailed. After all, in the Great Yen Mountain, many Qinghu Island soldiers saw that Ting Qingshan's reincarnation spear was damaged. The two were slightly puzzled and looked at Ting Qingshan in fear. They were afraid that Ting Qingshan would kill them. If you repair it, there will be a reward. If you have other intentions. Ting Qingshan's eyes were like lightning as he glanced at the two craftsmen. The two were so shocked that they nodded repeatedly. The old craftsman hastily said, Master Qing, don't worry. I will definitely repair it. Ting Qingshan's reputation spread throughout the world. Even the 4 Golden Dan innate experts couldn't kill him. Who would dare to offend him? When the sky turned dark, Ting Qingshan carried his bag and quickly left the blacksmithing shop. Tomorrow morning, we will be able to leave Yenzhou and enter the Great Prairie. In the blacksmithing shop, only the craftsman and the disciple were left in fear. They had just survived the disaster. Teacher, is he Ting Qingshan? The disciple finally dared to let out a sigh of relief. Our guest is Mr. Qing. What does he have to do with Ting Qingshan? The old craftsman glared at the disciple and immediately looked at the gold note in his hand worth 10 taels of silver. Only then did he let out a long sigh of relief. At this moment, he realized that his back was drenched in cold sweat. Chapter 265. At night, a bright moon hung high in the sky. The hazy moonlight was like a thin layer of gauze covering the entire land. On the vast land, one could vaguely see a fine horse galloping on the official road. It was Ting Qingshan who was riding his Dark Veins horse. These books are still the October edition. Ting Qingshan knew that the 9 prefectures' 4 rankings were revised every 6 months. The 4 rankings would be updated on the 1st of April and the 1st of October. However, Wanxiang Tower sells the Hidden Dragon ranking and Young Phoenix ranking for 100 taels of silver, which is 10 times the price of the earthly ranking. Until now, I have not carefully read the Hidden Dragon ranking and Young Phoenix ranking. While riding the horse, he read the book. Only when one was one with the horse and had night vision could he read while riding a horse at night. He flipped through the earthly ranking and then opened the thick Hidden Dragon ranking. There are only 108 people, but this book is much thicker than the earthly ranking. I wonder what the content is. He flipped through the book roughly and found that the first place in the Hidden Dragon ranking was Ting Qingshan. The description of Ting Qingshan was very detailed. Genius! Ting Qingshan saw the name of himself and shook his head with a smile. He continued to read. He flipped through the book roughly and quickly finished reading the description of 108 people. Hidden Dragon ranking describes 108 people, Earthly ranking describes 72 people. But the price is 9 times higher. No wonder. Turns out that there is more content behind. Ting Qingshan found that the description of the 108 hidden dragons was only the first half of the book. The second half described the recent heroes of the 9 prefectures. The 1st of January edition? Ting Qingshan was surprised when he saw the date. In view of the 9 prefectures' 4 rankings, there are too few heroes recorded. Since there are countless heroes in the 9 prefectures, the Wanxiang sect recorded them in the Chronicles of Heroes of the 9 prefectures. The Chronicles of Heroes of the 9 prefectures is recorded in Hidden Dragon ranking and Young Phoenix ranking and is revised every month. When Ting Qingshan saw this line in the book, he could not help but laugh. Haha, this Wanxiang sect really knows how to make money. The book would be revised once a month, and each book would cost 100 silver taels. Many people probably buy it every month. How much money can they make? Just buying the Hidden Dragon list would cost 1,200 taels of silver a year, and that was just for one person. Many sects and wealthy merchants would buy them. Even if there were only 10,000 hardcore buyers. It was also over 10 million taels of silver. If you include hardcore fans, as well as casual people who often buy. Many martial artists would buy it. It was not strange for a Hidden Dragon list to earn 100 million taels of silver a year. Just a single Hidden Dragon list had earned him 100 million taels of silver, which was equivalent to 1 million taels of gold. This was only a small part of the business of the Wanxiang sect. This Wanxiang sect is really rich. You also know how to make money. Ting Qingshan was amazed. The book itself isn't worth much, but the information is. The Wanxiang sect was spread throughout the 9 prefectures. The cost of collecting information is very low. This Chronicles of the Heroes of the 9 states was very exciting. It recorded all the heroes of the 9 prefectures. Many leaders of the horse bandits were also recorded in the book. The first page recorded Ting Qingshan. It recorded the Battle of Wu City? That's right, the first day of the first lunar month. That battle was on the 28th day of the 12th lunar month. With the information of the Wanxiang sect, it was known on the same day. Even the words I shouted, haha, bastards of Qinghu Island, do you think you can catch me, Ting Qingshan? Were recorded in the book. The content about himself was recorded in 2.5 pages. It was very detailed, and there was also a judgment. It made Ting Qingshan one of the few geniuses in the history of the 9 prefectures. The number 1 genius in 1,000 years? Ting Qingshan shook his head and smiled. Actually, I am only an emptiness Dan innate expert. I have not reached the true Dan innate expert. The reason why I am strong. I rely on the strength of the internal martial arts. In terms of talent, Ting Qingshan knew clearly that he was at most above average, but not the number 1 genius in 1,000 years. After reading the book, Ting Qingshan immersed himself in the state of becoming one with the horse. Clop, clop, clop. A night of flying. The prairie was vast and boundless. The entire land of the 9 prefectures, in the south of the 9 prefectures, was an endless wilderness. To the north of the 9 prefectures was a vast prairie. The wilderness and the prairie occupied a vast area, one in the south and the other in the north. Just how vast was it? There was no need to mention the wildlands. On this grassland, the population was very sparse. Sometimes, not a single person could be seen for several miles. Even though the population of the prairie was so sparse, just the total population of the 3 kingdoms in the prairie was over 100 million, not to mention the numerous prairie tribes. No one had ever calculated the population of the grassland. The land was vast and sparsely populated, but the total population was so large. One could imagine how vast its scope was. Crossing the prairie was an extremely difficult task. because there were too many tribes and too many mounted bandits. However, it was not difficult for an inborn expert. In the morning, the bright red sun hung in the east, its warm rays illuminating the boundless grassland. Nay, a fine horse raised its front hooves high into the air. We've finally arrived at the grassland. Ting Qingshan jumped off the horse's back and looked at the grassland scenery. He couldn't help but be shocked. The sky was azure. White clouds dotted the sky. In early spring, the grassland was a withered yellow that stretched as far as the eye could see. Ting Qingshan had an illusion. The world seemed to be this boundless grassland, and the sky was like a lid covering the entire world. At the end of the horizon, the grassland and the sky were connected. Boundless. Boundless. In front of the boundless grassland and the boundless sky, Ting Qingshan suddenly felt how small he was. He was like a grain of sand in the world. Standing on the ground, Ting Qingshan felt the earth was his root. The sky and the earth. If there were people around, they would realize that Ting Qingshan was actually performing the horizontal fist of the five-element fist of Xing-Yi martial art. There was even a baby-like smile on his face. Each of his moves was as slow as a millstone. Gradually, he closed his eyes. Ting Qingshan's attainments in the five-element fist had long reached the Grandmaster realm. All these years, he had been pondering the three postures. As for the five-element fist, he rarely practiced it. But at this moment, at the beginning of Ting Qingshan's horizontal fist, there were traces of the five-element fist. But as time passed, Ting Qingshan's fist gradually evolved. 2 hours, 4 hours. The sun rose from the east to the sky and then to the west. On the grassland, there were passers-by who saw Ting Qingshan practicing his fist. But those people only felt that Ting Qingshan's fist was very slow, so they didn't pay attention to it. On the vast grassland, Ting Qingshan closed his eyes and practiced the horizontal fist. At this moment, the horizontal fist was completely different from the horizontal fist of the five-element fist. Each of his moves became heavy. Each of his moves was as fast as lightning, but looked as slow as a millstone. The sky in the west was red. Another group of passers-by passed by. Look, what is that person doing? His fist art is so slow and his eyes are closed. A young girl from the prairie, who was wearing a green cloak and had a ribbon tied around her waist, pointed at Ting Qingshan and said in surprise, "Narain Tuya, that person might be a warrior," a muscular grassland man wearing a thick robe with a high collar said. Suddenly, a skinny youth in their group ran towards Ting Qingshan and grabbed the reins of the Black Veins horse that was several zhang away from Ting Qingshan. The Black Veins horse neighed, and the youth who stole the horse was startled. He immediately looked at Ting Qingshan. But Ting Qingshan was still practicing his fist with his eyes closed. "Wu Di! What are you doing?" The grassland girl was furious. "This is a Black Veins horse." The skinny youth laughed and said, "One horse costs nearly 1,000 taels of silver, enough to buy 200 sheep of our tribe. Wu Di, put the horse down. It belongs to the man who is practicing his fist," a silver-haired old man wearing a round white hat said. "Put it down," the grassland girl shouted. "Narain Tuya, stop dreaming. This is 200 sheep. It's more than all of my assets." The grassland youth called Wu Di jumped onto the Black Veins horse. The horse, which had been tamed for a long time, did not resist. Wu Di squeezed the horse's belly, and the Black Veins horse immediately galloped into the distance. "Narain Tuya, if you can, come and chase after us, ha-ha!" The grassland girl was enraged. She immediately ran to Ting Qingshan's side. "Your horse has been stolen." The grassland girl pulled Ting Qingshan. Bang! When the grassland girl's hand touched Ting Qingshan's body, she was thrown into the air and fell on the grass. Fortunately, the grass was thick enough, and nothing serious happened. "Narain Tuya!" Immediately, many people in the group ran over, crying out in surprise. At this moment, Ting Qingshan opened his eyes, which had regained their clarity. "Just now Ting Qingshan saw the red sky in the west. What, it's evening? Ting Qingshan vaguely remembered something. Narain Tuya, are you all right? Many people surrounded the girl. What's wrong with you? A grassland man glared at Ting Qingshan. Your horse has been stolen. Narain Tuya told you out of kindness. You even hurt her. Ting Qingshan also saw the figure riding the Black Veins horse in the distance. He could not help but feel bitter. Black Veins horse, if it was stolen, then so be it. Ting Qingshan did not care about the Black Veins horse at all. He did not expect that his rare moment of enlightenment would be ruined. I'm sorry. I was practicing my fist technique just now. I really did not know. Ting Qingshan apologized sincerely. He understood that the grassland girl did not do it on purpose. Narain Tuya had already stood up and ran over. She stared at Ting Qingshan with a pair of bright and pure eyes. She said excitedly, "You are so powerful. I only touched you, and you sent me flying. I did not feel any inner strength. You must be a very powerful expert. Can you teach me? Teach me that move that sent people flying." I still have something to do. Ting Qingshan looked at the crowd and said with a smile, "I'll be leaving first." Then, Ting Qingshan walked north alone. "Come with us." The grassland girl was still shouting. But Ting Qingshan's figure was fleeting, and he was soon far away. This is an expert. A truly powerful expert. The crowd looked at Ting Qingshan's retreating figure in shock. He walked casually, and in a short while, he was far away. This kind of strength, they had never seen before. I told you he was an expert. Narain Tuya stared helplessly at the already tiny figure in the distance. It would be great if he could teach me. On the boundless grassland, Ting Qingshan walked alone with a bag on his back. Why did that girl want to wake me up? Walking on the grassland, Ting Qingshan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was very unwilling. Ting Qingshan clenched his fist, and Ting Qingshan's fist faintly flashed with earthy yellow lightning. Ah! Ting Qingshan couldn't help but roar. Do you want me to be happy or angry? Ting Qingshan knew very well what had happened during the day. When Ting Qingshan grew up in Tingjia village, he had been thinking of creating a set of internal martial arts that was even more powerful than the godly tiger form technique. And Ting Qingshan had never given up on this goal. Ting Qingshan had been practicing the 3 postures all the time. As for the Xing E5 elemental spear, Ting Qingshan had created 4 moves. This spear art also contained the concept of internal martial art. For Ting Qingshan, cultivating the inner strength and the innate true origin was just a side effect. Whether it was in his previous life or this life, he still spent the most energy on internal martial arts. However, because of the thin spiritual qi on earth, reaching the Grandmaster realm was already the limit. Ting Qingshan had reached the Grandmaster realm long ago, and he believed that there was a higher realm above the Grandmaster realm. If he wanted to reach a higher realm, he must create a set of internal martial arts that was even more powerful than the godly tiger form technique. Just now, if she didn't disturb me. If I had cultivated in that realm for 10 days or half a month, I would probably have been able to create a set of internal martial arts that was more profound than the godly tiger form technique. Ting Qingshan was filled with hatred. This kind of epiphany was very rare. Firstly, Ting Qingshan had experienced many hardships and setbacks. In addition, Zhuge Qing had died and he was forced to leave his family and travel for thousands of miles. All of these were the tempering of Ting Qingshan's soul. Secondly, Ting Qingshan had accumulated a lot of experience. In his previous life, he was a grandmaster. In this life, he had cultivated for more than 10 years. He had painstakingly cultivated the 3 postures all year round, and his realm had also reached an extremely high level. Only by accumulating a lot of experience could one have an epiphany. Thirdly, it was also from the dangerous situation of being chased to the grassland. The boundless sky, the boundless grassland shocked his mind. The combination of the three caused Ting Qingshan to be in a trance and fall into a mysterious realm. I have only practiced for 1 day, and I have just created the beginning of a new fist art. Ting Qingshan only remembered 2 moves now. On the grassland, Ting Qingshan was practicing those 2 moves. However, after practicing for an hour, Ting Qingshan had to give up. I have a feeling that I want to explode, but it is suddenly cut off. I feel like I want to vomit blood. Ting Qingshan felt the blood and qi in his body fluctuate. It seems that my realm is not up to par. Only in that special state can I practice as I wish. In just 1 day, the results made Ting Qingshan excited. It turns out that the realm above the Grandmaster realm of internal martial arts is to communicate with the heavens and the earth. Ting Qingshan looked at his fist, and a faint earthy yellow light flashed. And what I comprehended before should be the earth element of the 5 elements of the heavens and the earth. Unfortunately, I have only touched the surface. Although Ting Qingshan was somewhat unwilling, he was still excited. Because he was finally not at a loss and he had a clear direction. This time I was able to comprehend it. This means that my realm of internal martial arts is approaching the limit. As long as I continue to practice like this, I will definitely break through the Grandmaster realm and reach a new height. Ting Qingshan always had an ambition in his heart. In the land of the 9 prefectures there were 2 types of cultivation systems. One was the Taoist sect. Whether it was the Emperor Yu's hall, the Ying family, or the Guiyuan sect, they were divided into the post-liminary realm, the innate realm, the emptiness realm, and the omnipotent realm. They cultivated the inner strength, the true origin, and the golden Dan of the innate realm. In the Dantian, the other was the Buddhist sect. The Buddhist sect mainly cultivated in the Mani temple. It was divided into the ordinary martial monk, Arhat, Bodhisattva, and Buddha omnipotent realm. The Buddhist relic for cultivation. It was located in the Naiwan Palace. Ting Qingshan had an ambition. He wanted to create a 3rd system outside of the Buddhist sect and the Taoist sect, the system of internal martial arts. In the plan, this system did not mainly cultivate the Naiwan Palace or the Dantian. It mainly cultivated the human body. The realms of the system of internal martial arts were divided into the ordinary martial artist and the Grandmaster realm. As for the realms above the Grandmaster realm, Ting Qingshan didn't know, but now he had touched the edge. Observing the axe art left by Emperor Yu is secondary. The most important thing is to create the 3rd level of the internal martial arts. At this moment, Ting Qingshan was filled with ambition. On the boundless prairie, Ting Qingshan walked alone and gradually walked further and further away. Chapter 266. In his previous life, after Kitten died, Ting Qingshan spent all his time and energy pursuing the peak of martial arts. The pinnacle of martial arts. This was what Ting Qingshan was pursuing from the bottom of his heart. Even in this life, Ting Qingshan had never given up on creating a path of internal martial arts. However, for so many years, it was as if he was in the dark, unable to find his way. When he stepped into the great prairie, he had an epiphany. Although he was interrupted, it allowed Ting Qingshan to have a clear direction. Go to the northern sea continent to watch the 36 splitting mountain forms? Ting Qingshan was not so anxious. Now, he wholeheartedly wanted to create a higher-level fist art of the internal martial arts. If I reach the northern sea continent and the godly axe mountain in the future, he watched the 36 splitting mountain forms. As the saying goes, all techniques are connected. Whether it was the Mani temple, the Emperor Yu's hall, or the Ying family, when they cultivated to the Bodhisattva or the emptiness realm, they would all comprehend the heavens and earth. As for my internal martial art, it's the same at this level. Watching the 36 splitting mountain forms is beneficial to my comprehension of heaven and earth. Ting Qingshan knew this very well. However, Ting Qingshan was puzzled as well. If I hadn't been in the heavenly flood palace and strengthened by the energy condensed by the splitting mountain axe, I wouldn't have been able to kill him. I estimate that my body only has about 100,000 gene of strength. In terms of pure physical strength, he can only be compared to an emptiness Dan innate expert. I can comprehend the heavenly Tao now? Ting Qingshan also had some doubts. He was well aware that his strength had increased exponentially in the heavenly flood palace. It was purely an external force. He did not rely on his own fist techniques to train step by step. Although puzzled, Ting Qingshan still cultivated diligently in the grassland. Ting Qingshan carried his backpack and walked on the vast grassland like an ascetic monk, using the sky as a blanket and the earth as a bed. Forgetting all worries and resentments, the only thing in his heart was the pursuit of the great Tao. During the first month that he stepped into the grassland where Ting Qingshan walked was still under the influence of Snow Hawk Hall. This was the outer region of the Great Prairie. Although Ting Qingshan ran into some trouble, it was not a big problem. In the second and third months after he stepped into the prairie, Ting Qingshan walked in the sphere of influence of the three kingdoms of the prairie. In these 2 months, Ting Qingshan went on a killing spree. That time, blood flowed like a river. That was because a group of mounted bandits discovered the lone traveler Ting Qingshan when they were raiding the grasslands. At that time, Ting Qingshan was dressed in rags, his face was full of beard, and his shoes were broken. He looked like a beggar. Perhaps the mounted gangsters hadn't found their prey yet. As they dashed past Ting Qingshan, one of the mounted gangsters casually slashed with his saber in an attempt to kill Ting Qingshan. It was too common for horse bandits to kill people on the grassland. Unfortunately, they had kicked an iron plate this time. There were more than 90 people in this detachment, but more than 30 of them were killed by Ting Qingshan on the spot. The rest immediately spurred their horses and fled. Ting Qingshan didn't care at all. He continued to train hard and pondered the earth element fist art. However, Ting Qingshan didn't expect that this group of mounted gangsters was actually a troop from the Tsang Lang army of the Golden Wolf Kingdom, one of the three kingdoms of the prairie. The three kingdoms of the prairie were hostile to each other. Because of the brutal and wild nature of the people of the prairie, the three kingdoms also allowed their troops to send some of their troops disguised as mounted gangsters to rob each other's sphere of influence. After more than 30 people were killed by Ting Qingshan, the surviving 60 soldiers fled to the borders of the kingdoms. There, 100,000 soldiers of the Tsang Lang army of the North City were stationed there. As one of the 5 towns of the Tsang Lang army, why would the North City army search for a lone traveler in the prairie for more than 30 people? Logically, this matter should have been left unsettled. But Ting Qingshan headed all the way north. Finally, he arrived at the borders of the Golden Wolf Kingdom. Moreover, he was seen by the patrolling soldiers among the surviving 60 soldiers. These soldiers gritted their teeth and wanted to avenge their dead brothers. They immediately informed the higher-ups. Since the lone traveler was right under their noses, of course, they would send people to kill him. This kill pierced through the sky. 100,000 soldiers of the North City Army. When the general of the North City Army learned that 800 of his men were killed by one person, he was furious. He ordered, even if he is a Golden Dan innate expert, he is only one person. Exhaust his innate true origin and kill him. In the Great Prairie, the 8 major sects didn't have the right to control the 3 kingdoms. In the center of the Great Prairie, the 3 kingdoms were the most powerful. The killing began immediately. The prairie people were wild. With so many of their brothers dead, they held the thought of exhausting the opponent's innate true origin to kill him. The killing lasted from noon to dusk. The dark red glow of the sunset covered the western sky, and the grassland was dyed red with blood. In the beginning, the lone traveler didn't kill quickly. But later on, the lone traveler became faster and faster. The seemingly slow punches were actually as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 people died. In the last 1 hour, the number of soldiers who died was equal to the number of soldiers who died in the previous 6 hours of killing. One battle. More than 16,000 people of the North City Army died. More than 3,000 people were injured. From the beginning, with a superior attitude, they wanted to kill Ting Qingshan. Then, with the thought of exhausting Ting Qingshan to death, countless soldiers surrounded him. Later on, too many people died. Many soldiers went crazy with jealousy. Until the end, they were scared out of their wits. Retreat! Retreat! Run! Run! The face of the general of the North City Army was even paler. He is not human. He is not human. He is Arata. Demon Arata. Ting Qingshan also saw the life of the prairie people when he trained hard in the Great Prairie. In the land of the 9 prefectures, Ting Qingshan knew that the Yu and Yen prefectures were cold lands. They had been fighting with the prairie people for a long time, so the people were extremely tough. The toughness of the people in the Yu and Yen prefectures was the best in the land of the 9 prefectures. And the prairie people of the Great Prairie attacked the Yu and Yen prefectures all year round. From this, one could imagine the toughness of the prairie people. To be precise, it wasn't toughness, it was brutality. And in a few months they walked thousands of miles from the periphery to the hinterland. Ting Qingshan found. Usually, the tribes of the Great Prairie were very hospitable to foreign travelers. Usually, if Ting Qingshan wanted to eat, he would eat in a tribe and give them some silver. The small tribes of the Great Prairie were the bottom of the Great Prairie. They herded sheep and cattle, lived on the grass, and were weak. And some of the big tribes, they were very overbearing and brutal. They exploited the small tribes. They even robbed like horse bandits. And the 3 great kingdoms were even more bloody. There were also powerful warriors in the kingdoms, and even innate masters. Because the land was vast and the population was sparse, the 3 great kingdoms had reached the limit of their control. What they usually did was to weaken the opponents and strengthen themselves. The armies of the 3 great kingdoms were more terrifying than horse bandits. To these savage soldiers who wanted to kill him, Lin Fan was furious. Of course, Ting Qingshan wouldn't hold back. Originally, Ting Qingshan wanted to kill some people and then leave. But who would have thought that those soldiers all had warhorses? They came and went like the wind, surrounding Ting Qingshan. Bows, divine crossbows, boiling oil. Even a large number of cavalrymen charged. In short, they wanted to exhaust Ting Qingshan to death. If he was a Golden Dan innate expert, it was possible that he would be exhausted to death if he was surrounded by thousands of soldiers. Unfortunately, they encountered Ting Qingshan, the only grandmaster of internal martial arts in the entire land of the 9 prefectures. More than 16,000 people died, and more than 3,000 were injured. More than 20,000 people died. This news couldn't be hidden. It spread across the Great Prairie like the wind. Countless horse bandits were terrified. They were afraid of encountering this lone traveler. The experts of the 3 great kingdoms also felt their hearts tremble. Only an emptiness realm expert with an endless amount of true origin could kill nearly 20,000 people. It was the 4th month since Ting Qingshan entered the Great Prairie. A mirror-like lake water was like a pearl embedded in the Great Prairie. The sun shone on the surface of the lake. A gentle breeze blew, creating ripples on the surface of the lake. The reflection of the sun on the surface of the lake also rippled. On the shore of the lake, Ting Qingshan was practicing his fist art. There were only 3 moves in the fist art, and he repeated them over and over again. However, these 3 moves seemed to be simple. When Ting Qingshan fought, there was a round and heavy concept. Moreover, his speed was very strange, confusing people's eyes. Wang Ling, with every move, Ting Qingshan's entire body shook. The sound of his muscles and bones resonating could be heard even if one was standing at the side. The sound was much louder than when he practiced the godly tiger form technique. A faint earthy yellow lightning occasionally flashed on the surface of Ting Qingshan's body. From noon until the sun set, it reflected the western sky red. Phew! Ting Qingshan finally stopped. Knowing the Tao in the morning, one can die without regrets. Ting Qingshan murmured. These 4 months were the most shocking 4 months of Ting Qingshan's transformation. Since the first day he entered the Great Prairie, he had an epiphany. Ting Qingshan wholeheartedly cultivated, using the sky as his blanket and the earth as his bed. Vaguely, Ting Qingshan felt as if he could feel the earth. When he encountered some pitiful small tribes, Ting Qingshan no longer pretended to be a bystander, but helped them. Ting Qingshan seemed to feel the generosity and tolerance of Mother Earth. Especially during the battle with the North Town Army, Ting Qingshan comprehended the third move during the slaughter. At this time, Ting Qingshan understood that slaughter belonged to the natural cycle of heaven and earth. To heaven and earth, there was no difference between the death of animals and the death of humans. After comprehending the third move, Ting Qingshan also meditated for another month before he could integrate the 3 moves into one. The Tao of heaven and earth can be divided into 5 elements. This fist art of mine should be the first part of the earth element fist art. Ting Qingshan felt that his fist art was still far from the complete interpretation of the earth element of the Tao of heaven. But, even so, Ting Qingshan still discovered a shocking result. I was wrong before, and I also thought wrong. Ting Qingshan sighed and stretched out his arm. With a thought, a faint earthy yellow lightning flashed. Last time I was ignorant, but this time I created the first part of the earth element fist art. Everything is finally clear. In the Buddhist sect's cultivation, ordinary martial monks cultivated inner strength. Afterward, in the Naiwan Palace, a trace of inner strength would be integrated into the spirit, and with the spirit as the main, the Sarira would be formed. The power of the Sarira that appeared was also called the origin of Buddha. In the Taoists' cultivation, ordinary martial artists cultivated inner strength. Afterward, in the Dantian, a trace of the spirit would be integrated into the inner strength, and with the inner strength as the main, the golden core would be formed. In the cultivation of the internal martial arts, ordinary martial artists also cultivated inner strength. Afterward, what would happen? All the meridians in the body would be unobstructed, and one would be able to control the bones, muscles, and internal organs. Actually, this was only the prerequisite of the Grandmaster realm. For example, the limit of the Dantian and the sufficient spirit were the prerequisites to reach the innate realm. What should I do next? There was no cultivation method for the internal martial arts. The so-called godly tiger form technique was only a method created in the world of Ting Qingshan's previous life, where the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was thin. It only increased the strength. And now, the earth element fist, that Ting Qingshan had created was only the first part, but it allowed Ting Qingshan to discover the secret. Chapter 267. The first level, Buddhism, Taoism, and my internal martial arts are all inner strength. As for the second level, the Buddhist sect calls it the origin of Buddha, while the Taoist sect calls it the innate true origin. Thus, the force of my internal martial arts will be named the internal supreme force. Ting Qingshan could feel that in every part of his body, in the depths of every minute cell, there were traces of the supreme force. Ting Qingshan waved his right fist. Xiao! An inch-long earthy yellow light left Ting Qingshan's fist. With a thud, a fist-sized pit was left on the grass, and the bottom couldn't be seen at a glance. This is the supreme force. When it is not used, it is hidden in the muscles, bones, internal organs, and other parts of the body to nourish the body. Once it is used, it is shockingly powerful. A smile appeared on Ting Qingshan's face as he said, "Moreover, the supreme force is more compatible with the body. The cycle of the heavenly Tao is very fair. Taoism has 3 levels of the innate realm, Emptiness Dan, True Dan, and Golden Dan. The Buddhist Arhat realm is also divided into 3 levels, from the ordinary Sarira to the highest 7-colored Sarira. As for my internal supreme force, it should also have 3 levels. This was Ting Qingshan's guess. On the vast prairie, Ting Qingshan walked all the way to the north. It was the 6th month since Ting Qingshan stepped into the prairie. Although he did not walk very fast, he still managed to reach the northern part of the prairie in 6 months. He was less than 1,000 li away from the coast of the North Sea. So it is like this. On top of a snowy mountain, Ting Qingshan was extremely excited. During these 2 months, he did not manage to create a more profound fist art based on the earth element fist. However, during these 2 months, Ting Qingshan's physical strength had been increasing slightly every day. He could feel the increase. 2 months. Ting Qingshan's physical strength had increased by 10%. It should be known that it was extremely difficult for Ting Qingshan to increase his physical strength, which was close to 700,000 jin. An increase of 10% in 2 months was already shocking enough. But this was just a side effect. The most important thing was, as expected, the internal supreme force has a higher level. A stream of earthy yellow light appeared on Ting Qingshan's arm. It surrounded Ting Qingshan's arm and formed a ring. Previously, the internal supreme force was flashing like flowing light. It should be the early stage of supreme force. But now, after the transformation, it could condense into a ring. Its power had also increased by several times. It should be the middle stage of gang strength. Ting Qingshan was extremely excited. After these 2 months of cultivation, he already had a lot of clear deductions. The Buddhist sect attaches great importance to the spirit of the essence, qi, and spirit. After all, the Sarira is in the Naiwan Palace. The Taoists place great importance on inner strength and godhood. If a god is weak, then it will be very difficult to improve his strength. But I'm different. I value my body the most. Next was inner force and spirit. The stronger your body, the faster your cultivation will be. Ting Qingshan also noticed that in the past 2 months, his physical strength had been gradually increasing during the process of cultivation. As his physical strength increased, the speed at which he refined the supreme force also increased. I advanced from the early stage of the supreme force to the middle stage of the supreme force so quickly. It should have something to do with my body being too strong. Ting Qingshan believed that even in the land of the 9 prefectures, if an internal martial artist just reached the Grandmaster realm, he would usually have a strength of 100,000 jin. In the early stage of the supreme force, the physical strength would probably reach 200,000 jin. In combination with the amplification of the supreme force, the physical strength would be even stronger. In the middle stage of the supreme force, the physical strength would be about 400,000 jin. In the late stage of the supreme force, the physical strength would be close to 800,000 jin. It was because his body was too strong that he was able to advance from the early stage of the supreme force to the middle stage in just 2 months. According to what I know, the Buddhist sect's requirement for every level of cultivation, the requirement for godhood is much higher. It is much higher than the Taoist sect's cultivation. As for my internal martial art, it attaches great importance to the body. The requirement for godhood is the lowest among the 3. Ting Qingshan also discovered during his cultivation that only when he reached the Grandmaster realm in controlling his entire body could he practice the earth element fist. Otherwise, it would just be an empty shelf. During the process of practicing the earth element fist, one's mind and body would fuse into one. Inner strength and godhood were changing in every part of Ting Qingshan's body, including his muscles, bones, and internal organs, transforming into the supreme force. Of the 3 major systems, one relies on the Naiwan Palace to transform inner strength and godhood into origin of Buddha. Another relies on the dantian to transform inner strength and godhood into true origin. The last relies on the entire body to transform inner strength and godhood into the internal supreme force. However, the proportions of the three are different. Among the origin of Buddha, godhood has the most godhood, but among the internal supreme force, godhood has the least godhood. Ting Ching Shan suddenly had a feeling of being enlightened. Just like cooking, the proportions of the ingredients used were different. Of course, the difficulty of the three systems was different. The internal martial art has the highest requirement for talent. Just getting started is already extremely difficult. Stepping into the Grandmaster realm is even harder than ascending to heaven. Then, practicing the earth element fist. Even with my guidance, one would only be able to cultivate the supreme force after comprehending the concept. Ting Ching Shan was very clear about this point. No matter if it was the Buddhist sect or the Taoist sect, as long as one sat cross-legged and harmonized the spirit and qi, one could cultivate the innate true origin. It was very simple. However, the internal martial arts could only be cultivated by practicing the fist technique. Whether it was the requirement for talent or comprehension, it was higher than the other two branches. But at the same time, the higher the difficulty, the stronger the internal martial art would be. Even in the early stage of the supreme force, the strength of the body and the supreme force would far surpass the opponents of the same level. Once one reached the late stage of the supreme force, even the Golden Dan innate experts and Arhat culmination experts would be inferior. Of course, Ting Ching Shan, the person who created the path of the internal martial art, would have a much more difficult cultivation than his descendants. His descendants might have the fist art created by Ting Ching Shan to learn. However, Ting Ching Shan had no one to teach him. He could only comprehend the heaven and earth and create a path. Difficult. Of course, creating and cultivating the third branch was very difficult. However, if Ting Ching Shan could really perfect the system of the internal martial art, then, in the future, the internal martial art would have an absolute advantage in the same level. In the heavenly ranking, as long as one reached the late stage of the supreme force, he would definitely be at the top of the heavenly ranking. The heavens were fair. The cultivation was difficult, but the achievements were naturally high. Haha, so what if it's difficult? Ting Ching Shan's eyes emitted an indescribable brilliance as he thought to himself, I, Ting Ching Shan, will spend my entire life to create a path of the internal martial art. I will let the branch of the internal martial art be passed down in the land of the 9 prefectures for millions of years. In the land of the 9 prefectures, the 8 supreme sects that were high above did not know. In the faraway northernmost part of the Great Prairie, a young man had already embarked on an unprecedented path. The sun was high up in the sky, but the wind on the prairie was still very cold. The temperature in the northernmost part of the Great Prairie was extremely low. Don't move. Be good. Don't move. Outside a yurt, a child wearing a thick woolen coat was holding a lamb and gently stroking its wool. The child's nose was red from the cold. Suddenly, he saw a figure appear in the distance. Alone? The child was slightly surprised. In the Great Prairie where danger lurked everywhere, it was very dangerous for a person to be alone. He saw a man with a face full of stubble, wearing a tattered cotton-padded jacket and carrying a square bag on his back, walking towards the child. Ting Ching Shan was wholeheartedly cultivating and did not care about his appearance. After not paying attention to him for half a year, his beard had grown out. Do you have food in your house? Ting Ching Shan looked at the child with a smile and said, I have silver. As he spoke, he took out a piece of broken silver that weighed 2 taels. At this moment, in this small tribe, some adults who were herding sheep or busy with their business noticed Ting Ching Shan. Several men from the Great Prairie wearing thick leather coats and big leather hats walked over. Wait a moment. I will go and call my father. The child turned his head and shouted, "Father, a guest has arrived." Soon, a tall and sturdy man with 2 thick braids walked out of the yurt. In the land of the 9 prefectures, men rarely wore braids, but it could be seen everywhere in the Great Prairie. "Guest from afar, welcome to our Chilean tribe." The big man from the Great Prairie had a simple smile on his face. "Father, this uncle wants to eat," the child said hastily. "Please come in." The big man from the Great Prairie said with a smile, "We were just about to have lunch." Ting Qingshan was directly invited into his yurt. "Ha, Chabu, you are going to make money today. You must treat us to wine tonight." The few men who had walked over earlier all turned around and left. In the Great Prairie, some small tribes were hospitable, but if the guests ate and drank without paying, the host would probably not care if the guests liked to eat and drink. But if they took it for granted, then it would be terrible. The men of the Great Prairie would fight whenever they said they wanted to. Ting Qingshan had cultivated diligently in the Great Prairie for half a year and had gained a lot of experience. The purchasing power of silver in the Great Prairie was much higher than in the land of the 9 prefectures. To an ordinary family in the Great Prairie, 2 taels of silver could be obtained by eating a meal. It was like a pie falling from the sky. Inside the yurt. This yurt was actually a Mongolian yurt on the Great Prairie in Ting Qingshan's previous life. It was easy to disassemble and was a mobile residence. "My name is Chabu. May I know your name, guest?" The big man and Ting Qingshan sat opposite each other on a sheepskin mat. There was a low table in front of them. "My name is Huha," Ting Qingshan answered with a smile. When traveling in the Great Prairie, one would usually have a name that belonged to the Great Prairie. For example, Arata represented the most terrifying demon in the Great Prairie. Actually, compared to the land of the 9 prefectures, the Great Prairie was still in the era of half-tribes. After Emperor Yu unified the land of the 9 prefectures, the land of the 9 prefectures left the era of tribes. "Brother Huha, sorry to keep you waiting. My woman went to prepare the hand-braised mutton." Chaba smiled and said, "So, I was a little slow. It's okay. There's no hurry." Ting Qingshan smiled. "Come, let's drink some hot milk tea to warm our bodies." Chabu picked up the milk tea pot and poured a cup for each of the 3. "Uncle Huha, aren't you cold? This cotton-padded jacket is torn." The child stared at Ting Qingshan. Ting Qingshan lowered his head and looked at the torn cotton-padded jacket on his body. This cotton-padded jacket was given to him when he was having a meal in a small tribe. However, he didn't take good care of it while he was cultivating, so it naturally became tattered. "Ha!" Chabu touched his son's head and said, "Your Uncle Huha is an expert. He won't be afraid of this little bit of cold." In the chaotic Great Prairie, who didn't have good eyesight? "Ah, the hand-braised mutton is here," the child shouted excitedly. As a woman carried a copper basin and placed it on the table, Chabu said, "Before we eat, let us first thank the God of Heaven for his gift." Chabu closed his eyes and put his palms together. His son did the same. God of Heaven, Ting Qingshan knew very well. The southernmost part of the Great Prairie was the territory of the Snow Hawk Hall. In the middle of the Great Prairie were the 3 great kingdoms. In the north of the Great Prairie was the God of Heaven Mountain. The God of Heaven Mountain had a terrifying influence on the tribesmen. Chapter 268. A cold wind blew outside the yurt, but it was very warm inside the yurt. Ting Qingshan drank hot milk tea, ate a big piece of lamb, and a big plate of hand-fried noodles. Although it was not as exquisite as the dishes in the land of the 9 prefectures, it was still very comfortable. "Big brother!" A young man wearing a gray leather robe walked into the yurt. Chabu, who was happily chatting with Ting Qingshan, saw this person walk in and his face darkened. "Why are you here?" "Tsk. The young man glanced at Ting Qingshan. When he saw Ting Qingshan's tattered cotton-padded jacket, he frowned, but he still smiled and said, "Big brother, my life is very tight. A few days ago, a few sheep went missing, and I don't know who stole them. My life is very hard. Chabu frowned. What is it? Say it. Big brother is very straightforward. The young man laughed. Big brother, lend me some money. After I sell the sheep, I will definitely return it to you. Return? I haven't paid you back what I owed you last time, the child said in a low voice, dissatisfied. The woman who was eating at the side immediately pulled the child back and glared at him. I am speaking the truth. The child muttered and didn't dare to say anything else. The young man didn't seem to mind and only looked at Chabu with a smile. Chabu's face darkened. He took out a piece of silver from his pocket, which was about half a tael, and threw it to the young man. Thank you, big brother. I will definitely return the silver. I will definitely return it. The young man was overjoyed and said. Chabu's face darkened. Humph, don't thank me. Father didn't ask me to take care of you. I would have kicked you out long ago. Remember, go and practice your knife skills with the Ceylon brothers. Don't be lazy all day. At this moment, the young man opened the cloth and walked out. Father, where did he take care of the sheep? A few days ago, I saw him slaughter a sheep and eat it, the child said unwillingly. Chabu stared at his son. Jida, remember, that is your uncle. Jida doesn't have such a useless uncle. The child raised his head and said. Ting Qingshan could only bury his head and eat. It was not appropriate for him to intervene in such a family matter. No matter which manner it was, there would always be people who were gluttonous and lazy. For this kind of person, generally, villas or tribes would marginalize them. Clang, clang. Loud crashing noises could be heard coming from outside. Ting Qingshan's ears pricked up and asked in surprise, Brother Chabu, what's going on outside? Before Chabu could say anything, his son rushed to say, It is our tribe's men who are competing. It must be Uncle Ceylon and the rest. They practice their swords very hard every day. Uncle Ceylon and the others were very powerful. I also learned saber skills from Uncle Ceylon. Ting Qingshan put down the cup of milk tea and stood up with a smile. Brother Chabu, I'm full too. Thank you for your hospitality. As he spoke, he placed 2 taels of silver on the table. Chabulin hastily picked up the 2 taels of silver and pushed it back to Ting Qingshan as he shouted, Brother Huha, it's just a casual lunch. It's not worth much. 2 taels of silver was too much. I can't take it. Chabulin wanted to push it back to Ting Qingshan, but Ting Qingshan blocked Chabulin with his right hand. Chabulin couldn't get any closer. Such great strength. Chabulin was secretly shocked. 2 taels of silver is nothing to me. Ting Qingshan smiled and said, Brother Chabulin, if you think highly of me, then take it. Brother Chabulin, if you think highly of me, then take it. Chabulin froze and smiled helplessly. If Ting Qingshan still didn't take it, then he would be looking down on Ting Qingshan. All right, I will take it, Chabulin said casually. Brother Huha, aren't you curious about the competition outside? Let's go and have a look. Let's go. Ting Qingshan smiled and nodded. I want to go too. The child from the grassland hastily stood up. Haha, let's go together. Ting Qingshan smiled as he held the child's hand and walked out of the yurt. Ting Qingshan and the muscular man, Chabulin, followed the source of the sound to the northeast. As they went deeper into the tribe, Ting Qingshan had a rough idea of the Chilean tribe. There are only over 100 yurts in the entire tribe. There are big yurts and small yurts. However, the population of the entire tribe should be less than 1,000. It can be considered a small tribe. At this time, Ting Qingshan had already seen the 2 people sparring on the grassland in front of him. One of them was tall and had the back of a tiger and waist of a bear. One of the 2 was tall and sturdy while the other was as skinny as a wild wolf. The 2 were using scimitars that were commonly seen on the grassland. Phew! Phew! The 2 dodged agilely and continuously past each other. Occasionally, they would stab their opponent. They didn't hold back at all. Ha! Ha! The two's faces were filled with heat as they stared at each other. This is a good method. Use a wooden saber. Furthermore, the wooden saber is wrapped in sheepskin. Even if you use all your strength, you will only injure your opponent. Ting Qingshan nodded to himself. Chabulan, who was at the side, smiled and said, "Brother Huha, how strong are the warriors of our tribe?" "The skinnier one is the number one warrior of our tribe, Ceylon. He had once killed more than 10 mounted gangsters, and he himself had not suffered any injuries. Moreover, even the women of the Wanshur tribe are willing to marry Brother Ceylon." Chabu's face was filled with pride. "Not bad. Very powerful," Ting Qingshan praised. "Where did you learn your saber techniques and inner strength?" Ting Qingshan could tell at a glance that both of them had learned inner strength. Otherwise, they would not have been able to move so quickly. In the land of the 9 prefectures, many commoners did not have the opportunity to learn inner strength. However, in the Qilian tribe, a small tribe at the bottom level, the 2 people who were fighting were both inner strength experts. This made Ting Qingshan very surprised. "A few times before, I went to those tribes to beg for food. They all ate and left. I didn't pay attention to whether they practiced inner force or not." "Inner force? Saber skills?" Chaba laughed. "In the Great Prairie, all the tribes in the north can learn inner strength and saber skills. The central region and the southernmost region cannot learn them." Ting Qingshan looked at Chabu in surprise. "These saber techniques and inner strength. It was the emissary from the god of Heaven Mountain who gave it to each of our tribes." Chabu appeared very respectful. "The emissary from the god of Heaven Mountain gave us hope. They also said that if we can lift a 5,000 gene rock, we can enter the god of Heaven Mountain and live there." When Ting Qingshan heard this, he was shocked. A 5,000 gene rock? In the land of the 9 prefectures, those who could lift a 2,000 gene rock were second-rated warriors. Those who could lift a 10,000 gene rock were first-rated warriors. Those who could lift a 5,000 gene rock were extremely powerful among second-rated warriors. For example, in the black armored corps of the Gui Yuan sect, only a corporal had such strength. The god of Heaven Mountain actually dared to give the secret inner strength and saber skills to all the surrounding tribes. They did not even worry that the spread of the secret manuals would lead to the emergence of forces that could topple them. This courage is really shocking, Ting Qingshan thought to himself. In the land of the 9 prefectures, no sect would spread the secret inner strength manuals for no reason. On the green grassland, the 2 heroes of the tribe finally had a winner. "Ceylon, I admit defeat." That tall and sturdy man's back was pressed by his opponent's knee and he was pressed to the ground. "Uncle Ceylon is the most powerful." The child beside Ting Qingshan shouted excitedly. Ting Qingshan smiled and patted the child's head. Then, he smiled at Chabu and said, "Brother Chabu, I still have something to do, so I have to continue my journey. I will take my leave first." "Why are you in such a hurry?" Chabu asked. Ting Qingshan was about to speak, but his facial expression suddenly changed. He turned his head and looked towards the south. With his 6th sense, he could tell that there was a tremor in the south. It should be the tremor caused by a large number of horse hooves. Clop, clop, clop. Mounted bandits! Mounted bandits! Suddenly, a sharp shout broke the silence of the entire tribe. Ceylon, who was sweating profusely, suddenly changed his facial expression and shouted, "Old people and children, go to the yurts. Men, follow me!" The men rushed forward while the women followed behind. Their faces were filled with madness. "Jilon, go to the yurts." Chabu pushed his son and rushed forward with big strides. At this moment, he didn't have the time to greet Ting Qingshan. Ting Qingshan also followed the crowd and ran to the front. "It's the whole Gale tribe! Whole Gale! It's the whole Gale!" Terrified shouts came from the southernmost side. These terrified shouts were like huge hammers pounding on the hearts of everyone in the tribe. The men and women of the tribe, who were originally ready to tear their enemies into pieces, changed their facial expressions. They even retracted their raised machetes. "What's going on?" Ting Qingshan quickly came to the front. Ting Qingshan glanced over. At the front of the Qilian tribe's crowd, a large group of riders wearing silver armor stopped. The chief of the tribe had already run to the front. "Respected lord of the whole Gale tribe." The silver-haired old man wearing a thick gown bowed. The leader of the riders on the warhorse looked at the chief through his cold mask and said, "Qilian tribe, 1 year has passed. Your tribe has a total of more than 800 people. 3 taels of silver for each person. Not counting the small change, you need to pay 2,400 taels of silver." 3 taels of silver? Ting Qingshan was shocked when he heard this. Even in the wealthy Yangzhou, the White Horse Gang only collected half a tael of silver per person. The tribes in the prairie were much poorer than those in the land of the 9 prefectures. For example, if there were 4 people in a family, each family would have to pay 12 taels of silver. In the prairie, a family in a low-level tribe like this would have a hard time earning 12 taels of silver in a year. "If we don't eat or drink, we won't even have enough to pay. Are they trying to force us to death?" Ting Qingshan's facial expression changed. The people of this Qilian tribe are considered tough. However, when they heard the 2 words whole Gale, they were scared out of their wit. You can't blame them. Ting Qingshan could tell with a glance. The group of mounted gangsters in front of him were all wearing silver-gray armor. Their horses were also top-grade warhorses. In the land of the 9 prefectures, only the White Horse Battalion of the White Horse Gang could barely compare. "Lord." The chief suddenly knelt down and begged, "Lord, please give our Qilian tribe half a year's time. We will definitely gather the money. Right now, we really don't have that much money." "If you don't have money, can't you rob other tribes?" The chief on the warhorse sneered. "On the Great Prairie, a useless tribe like yours doesn't have the right to exist. Since you can't pay, then we will follow the old rules." The facial expression of everyone in the Qilian tribe changed. "Spare us! Lord, spare us!" Many people knelt down. Ting Qingshan felt something was wrong when he heard this. The chief said the old rules. "What rules?" Chabu, who was not far from Ting Qingshan, also knelt down and begged with a pale face. "Brothers, let's begin." The chief's eyes were cold. "Roar!" The cavalrymen let out howls like mad wolves and raised the scimitars in their hands high up. Ting Qingshan somewhat understood what the other party's old rules were. Still not resisting at this moment? Ting Qingshan was very puzzled. At the moment of death, they should fight with all their might. He looked at Chabu, who was still kneeling. "No, no. After eating a meal, I will help you this time." Ting Qingshan's cold gaze swept across the group of insolent cavalrymen who were like a pack of wolves and wanted to devour the tribe. Chapter 269. Following the order of the leader of the horsemen, all the horsemen howled and raised the scimitars in their hands. Under the illumination of the sun, the edge of the scimitars reflected a chilling radiance. Although the clansmen of the Qilian tribe were holding weapons, they were all scared out of their wits. They didn't dare to organize an effective resistance. Many of them were still kneeling on the ground. Roar, howling, the horsemen rode their warhorses and charged into the crowd. They can't even afford to pay the silver. Truly useless. The leader of the horsemen rode high up on his horse and looked at this scene coldly. Doing this kind of thing for many years and killing people didn't even cause a ripple in his heart. It's time to see blood. He was looking forward to seeing the first smear of red. Bang! 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 A deep sound that sounded like a heavy hammer hitting a large drum suddenly rang out. This sound caused everyone's heart to twitch uncontrollably. They all turned their heads to look. They saw blood splattering. 3 warhorses and 3 horsemen were thrown high up. Everyone raised their heads to look at the 3 war horses and horsemen that were thrown high up. Bang! A series of crashing sounds rang out. The 3 war horses and horsemen fell heavily on the ground. With great difficulty, bubbles of blood seeped out of their mouth. After that, there were no more sounds. In the blink of an eye, the 3 war horses and horsemen were dead. Nay, all the horsemen that were charging immediately reined in their war horses. With bloodshot eyes, they stared at the figure that looked like a beggar standing at the front of the crowd. He wore a tattered cotton robe and had messy long hair. Only his eyes were like the heavenly lake on the peak of the God of Heaven mountain. They were so calm that it made people's hearts palpitate. Chilean tribe, you dare to resist? Do you want to exterminate your tribe? The leader of the horsemen roared angrily. His eyes widened so much that the corners of his eyes looked like they were about to tear. The chief of the Chilean tribe was so frightened that he shook his head hastily and said, "No, no. He isn't a member of our Chilean tribe. We don't know him. We don't know him." The youth that borrowed Chabu's silver also hastily shouted, "It has nothing to do with our Chilean tribe. It has nothing to do with him." Tingqingshan, who was at the front, frowned slightly. He helped them? But they cut off all relations with him? Tingqingshan turned his head and glanced at Chabu. Chabu anxiously winked at Tingqingshan and shook his head. But he didn't dare to speak. "Oh, outsider!" The leader of the knights looked at Tingqingshan coldly, as if he was looking at a dead man. "Outsider, listen up. Under the illumination of the heavenly God's light on the prairie, no one has ever dared to fight against us. Everyone who made a move is dead." The horsemen stood high above and looked down at Tingqingshan. As for the other knights, their eyes were bloodshot like a pack of crazy wolves as they stared at Tingqingshan. "You must die for killing the people of the whole Gale tribe," the leader of the riders roared. Tingqingshan's cold eyes swept over the leader of the knights. His lips opened slightly, "Frog at the bottom of the well." Although this sentence was soft, it echoed in everyone's ears. Hearing this, the knights became even more furious. "Kill!" The leader of the knights waved the scimitar in his hand and pointed it at Tingqingshan. He roared crazily, "Kill him! Kill! Kill!" All the knights raised their scimitars. The scimitars reflected the cold glint of the blade. Following the galloping war horses, they dashed towards Tingqingshan. Like a raging flood formed by swords and sabers, they surged towards Tingqingshan. However, Tingqingshan was like a rock that remained motionless despite being hit by thousands of years of attacks. The clansmen of the Chilean tribe who were watching this scene had different expressions on their faces. Some were gnashing their teeth while others felt sorry. "Brother Huha, why did you?" Chabu clenched his fist. "Bastard!" Ceylon clenched his teeth as his face twitched. "This brat probably thinks that he has some strength. However, how can we offend the people of the whole Gale tribe? If we offend them, we must die." Chabu's younger brother, the young man who borrowed money, thought to himself. Suddenly, everyone's face showed astonishment. Purring! 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 Dense sounds that sounded like the beating of a heavy hammer resounded continuously. In the blink of an eye, the 9 war horses that charged towards Tingqingshan were all thrown into the air. The strangest thing was, the 9 knights who didn't seem to be hit spat out blood as well. Purring! Tingqingshan's palm slapped the body of the horse. The entire body of the horse trembled like a wave. At the same time, the sound was transmitted to the body of the knight, causing the knight's body to tremble as well. Even if the knight didn't come into contact with Tingqingshan's palm, his internal organs had already been shattered. Phew! 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 Tingqingshan's body was as fast as lightning, but his palm was as slow as a millstone. However, it only seemed slow. In reality, it was so fast that it was strange. Deep and low purring. Purring sounds could be heard as the war horses and knights were thrown into the air. Those who were hit would definitely die. Stop! Stop! The leader of the knights finally reacted and hastily shouted in fear. Their warhorses were high-quality warhorses of the prairie. On the prairie, horses, cows, and sheep were the most abundant. High-quality warhorses weren't expensive. Once the warhorses charged, they would definitely have a force of over 10,000 jin. However, in front of the beggar, the charging warhorses were like mud. One slap and one was sent flying. Run! Run! All the knights surrounding Ting Qingshan howled. They turned their horses around in fear, wanting to flee. However, turning their horses around required time. Pung! 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 The sounds of heavy blows that shook the hearts of the mounted gangsters continued to ring out, causing them to panic and break down. Warhorses and men were thrown into the air. After more than 50 warhorses and men died, the knights finally fled in all directions. The tattered Ting Qingshan swept his gaze across the fleeing group of people. You want to kill me with just these few people? Compared to the massacre in the Golden Wolf Kingdom, this was nothing. At that time, Ting Qingshan slaughtered more than 16,000 people and severely injured more than 3,000 people. The so-called serious injuries were caused by the ripples of Ting Qingshan's dissipated qi strength. What's going on with the Qilian tribe? Ting Qingshan turned his head and looked at the people of the Qilian tribe. Everyone in the Qilian tribe looked at Ting Qingshan as if they were looking at a god. The terrifying battle just now only lasted for a few breaths' time. From the beginning, the knights howled and surrounded Ting Qingshan. As soon as they made contact, 9 warhorses were thrown into the air. As the knights continued to grit their teeth and charge forward, more than 10 people were killed. When they wanted to flee in fear, just the chaos caused by turning their heads caused the deaths of more than 20 people. The people of the Qilian tribe only saw the warhorses and the knights being thrown into the air. That seemingly ordinary palm seemed to contain an unimaginable power. How is this possible? That palm didn't even touch anyone and they died. How could the people of the whole Gale tribe be so weak? They were all sent flying. The people of the Qilian tribe were completely stunned. They had never seen such a terrifying person. Perhaps in their eyes, a person who could use a scimitar flexibly and kill a few ordinary mounted gangsters was a hero. However, they had never seen anyone who dared to fight the whole Gale tribe head-on. Anyone who dared to ignore the whole Gale tribe was a great figure. Even if it was a great figure, the most he could do was to intimidate the whole Gale tribe with his power. He didn't dare to fight the whole Gale tribe head-on. Brother Huha! Lord Huha! Chabu walked over and immediately bowed. Brother Chabu, you can just call me Huha, Ting Qingshan said. The surrounding clansmen were very nervous. At this moment, many children and old people ran over. They were all amazed as they listened to the others talking about what happened just now. Uncle Huha, did you kill them all? Chabu's son, the cute child, ran over and looked at Ting Qingshan with shock and admiration. Jilan, stop it. Chabu hastily pulled his son back. Ting Qingshan could feel that this forthright man from the prairie was somewhat reserved in front of him. At this moment, the #1 warrior of the Qilian tribe, Silan, walked over. He bowed and said gratefully, Lord Huha, thank you for saving the Qilian tribe from this disaster temporarily. Hearing this, Ting Qingshan frowned. Temporarily? Lord Huha, if it weren't for you, many clansmen of the Qilian tribe would have died today. The chief also bowed gratefully. Ting Qingshan remembered clearly. When he made his move just now, the people of the Qilian tribe made it clear that they had nothing to do with him. Can you tell me what happened? Ting Qingshan looked at these people in confusion. Lord Huha, the man named Silan said respectfully, you must be an outsider from a faraway place. There are 4 strongest tribes in the northern Great Prairie. They manage the 4 regions of the northern Great Prairie. The region we are in is managed by the whole Gale tribe. Ting Qingshan frowned and asked, they aren't mounted bandits? No, they are the strongest tribe, Silan said. Ting Qingshan shook his head. They aren't mounted bandits, but they are more powerful than mounted bandits. Ceylon smiled helplessly. Lord, the northern Great Prairie is managed by the 4 great tribes. At least, it won't be like the central Great Prairie where so many people died. If we can gather enough money, we can live. The great god of Heaven Mountain doesn't care? Ting Qingshan said. Lord, please don't slander the god of Heaven Mountain. Ceylon said solemnly. The god of heaven is selfless and fair. Chabu hastily said. The great god of heaven will not help anyone. We want to replace the 4 great tribes, unless we surpass them. Also, the great god of heaven said, no matter what the reason is, we are not allowed to kill children. Children are the future of the Great Prairie. If anyone disobeys, the god of heaven will punish them. Ting Qingshan listened silently. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the god of Heaven Mountain was religious. The people of the Great Prairie were taught that the god of heaven was selfless and fair. Tell me, what is the punishment that the whole Gale tribe mentioned? Ting Qingshan asked. Ceylon clenched his teeth and said, if we can't pay the money, the people of the whole Gale tribe will kill half of the men in our tribe. They will. Chabu, who was at the side, whispered with red eyes, they will even humiliate our women. This is the punishment. After the punishment, the money for this year will be waived. Chapter 270. Hearing this, Ting Qingshan frowned. Killing half of the men? Humiliating women? This was indeed a terrifying disaster for a tribe. However, because of the order from the god of Heaven Mountain, no one dared to kill the children. At least the tribe wouldn't be completely exterminated. Therefore, the children of the northern Great Prairie would practice their inner strength and saber arts with all their might. Lord Huha, Chabu said guiltily, just now we drew a clear line because we dared to disobey the whole Gale tribe. The whole Gale tribe would kill all the adults in our tribe. Then, they would kidnap the children and sell them to the other tribes, to be slaves. Hearing this, Ting Qingshan sighed inwardly. The god of Heaven Mountain didn't allow the killing of children, but it didn't say that they couldn't kidnap and sell them as slaves. After walking on the Great Prairie for so long, Ting Qingshan knew. In the Great Prairie, the important figures of some big tribes all had slaves at home. The children born by these slaves would also be slaves. Generations would never have a chance to rise. Therefore, those who dared to disobey the whole Gale tribe would indeed be exterminated. Lord Huha, leave quickly. Chabu hastily said. Those who escaped know that you are a foreigner. They will do things according to the rules and won't vent their anger on us. But you, those who dared to disobey the whole Gale tribe won't be let off easily. Lord Huha, leave quickly. Ting Qingshan glanced at the surrounding people of the tribe and said, Brother Chabu, don't worry about me. I heard you guys say that we will be safe for now. I'm afraid that the people of the whole Gale tribe will still come to collect money. Immediately, Ceylon, Chabu, and the chief, who were standing around Ting Qingshan, showed a hint of sadness on their faces. At the bottom of the prairie, a small tribe with a population of less than 1,000. It was almost impossible to earn enough money through legal means. They could only rely on robbing other weak tribes. Ting Qingshan suddenly felt someone pulling his pants. He looked down and saw little Jirun with tears in her eyes. Uncle Huha, can you help us? Little Jirun stared at Ting Qingshan with tears welling up in her eyes. Ting Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. I'm going to take a ship to the distant Northern Sea continent very soon. The distance between the Northern Sea continent and the land of the 9 prefectures was more than 10,000 miles. There was no contact between them. The currency used in the Northern Sea continent was not necessarily gold or silver. Even if gold and silver were used as currency, they won't recognize silver notes or gold notes either. Silver notes and gold notes could be exchanged at a bank or a bank. But if it was taken to the Northern Sea continent, silver and gold notes would be a piece of waste paper. Forget it. It's useless for me to bring it with me. I'll help them. Ting Qingshan made up his mind. Looking at the large number of people of the Qilian tribe who were looking at him with reverence, Ting Qingshan said to Silan, Chabu and the chief, "The three of you follow me." After saying that, Ting Qingshan walked towards the nearest yurt. Silan, Chabu, and the tribe leader looked at each other with a puzzled expression, then they followed behind Ting Qingshan. The other people of the Qilian tribe were puzzled when they saw Ting Qingshan, the chief, and the others walking towards a yurt not far away. They didn't know what they were doing. What does Lord Huha want with the chief and the others? If that Huha doesn't leave now, he won't be able to leave when the men of the whole Gale tribe arrive. Chabu's younger brother sneered. Immediately, many of the surrounding clansmen glared at the young man. It seemed like they were about to attack. The young man was startled. He hastily smiled and said, I'm doing this for the good of Lord Huha. I'm worried about him. We owe Lord Huha a great favor. Why would I be disrespectful to him? The other clansmen all knew what kind of person Chabu's younger brother was. Inside the yurt, Chabu, Silan, and the old chief all stared at Ting Qingshan. Ting Qingshan glanced at the three and said, 1,400 taels of silver a year. How can the Qilian tribe afford it? As he said this, Ting Qingshan took out a stack of silver notes from his bosom. Chabu and the other two stared at the stack of silver notes in astonishment. As high-ranking members of the tribe, the three of them had seen silver notes before. Silver notes came from the distant and rich land of the 9 prefectures. Of course, it was also common in the Great Prairie. There are notes worth 100 taels of silver and 1,000 taels of silver. Altogether, there are 11,000 taels of silver. Ting Qingshan casually placed the notes on the table in the yurt and said, "If you give it to the whole Gale tribe, it will be enough for you for 4 to 5 years. Just take it that I'm acquainted with the Qilian tribe." 11,000 taels of silver? Chabu and the other two's eyes were filled with joy. "Thank you, Lord Huha." The old chief was the first to kneel down. Chabu and Silan were so grateful that they hastily kneeled down as well. However, Ting Qingshan hastily stopped the three. "No need to thank me," Ting Qingshan said with a faint smile. "Lord Huha, you saved the lives of our tribe." The old chief was so excited that tears welled up in his eyes. "With these 11,000 taels of silver notes, no matter how hard our tribesmen work, we will have enough silver for at least 10 years. Silan said excitedly. It was indeed difficult to pay 2,400 taels of silver every year. However, if they only needed to pay 1,300–400 taels of silver, it was still possible for everyone to live a frugal lifestyle. With 11,000 taels of silver, they could indeed last for 10 years. 10 years was a very long time. Within these 10 years, if another outstanding warrior appeared in the tribe, he might be able to change the fate of the tribe. "Lord Huha," Chabu said excitedly, "the luckiest thing in my Chabu's life is to be able to receive Lord Huha. Lord, the people of the whole Gale tribe will never give up. In the northern Great Prairie, they have never bowed down to anyone. Lord Huha, leave quickly," Chabu said worriedly. Ting Qingshan waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about me. However, I think it's better for your tribe to move. If the people of the whole Gale tribe come looking for me and they can't find me, they might interrogate you. Perhaps he might interrogate you and kill some of you in a fit of anger." When the old chief heard this, he hastily said, "Yes, we have to move immediately. Everyone, I'll be leaving first." Ting Qingshan immediately left the yurt and quickly left the Qilian tribe. To the people of the Qilian tribe, the story of meeting the super-powerful warrior Huha would be passed down from generation to generation. In the evening, the glow of the sunset filled the western sky. Endless snowy mountains stood tall. At this moment, Ting Qingshan was on the peak of one of the snowy mountains. The cold wind blew on his face like knives as Ting Qingshan looked at the vast prairie. The higher one stood, the farther one could see. Standing on the peak of the snowy mountains made one's mind open. Ting Qingshan was very happy to cultivate on the peak of the snowy mountains. The prairie was cold and there were many snowy mountains. The parcel was placed on the ground and had already been opened. Inside the parcel was a rectangular wooden box. The wooden box was opened. At the bottom of the wooden box was a black axe and 2 spear shafts were stacked on top of the axe. Ting Qingshan grabbed the reincarnation spear and quickly spun the spear shaft. Old friend. Ting Qingshan touched the spear shafts and revealed a smile. Let's begin. With the reincarnation spear in his hand, Ting Qingshan started cultivating the transmutation unity law of the 5 elemental spear arts of the Xing-Yi martial school. Among the 4 great spear arts created by Ting Qingshan, the transmutation unity law was the only defensive spear art. This was the foundation and the only defensive spear art. Ting Qingshan had spent the most time and effort in researching this spear art from the very beginning. The transmutation unity law spear art. It was derived from the horizontal fist of the earth element. In the past, whenever Ting Qingshan used this spear art, even an arrow would be completely blocked by Ting Qingshan. Phew. The reincarnation spear in Ting Qingshan's hand transformed into a blurry shadow. For a moment it seemed to be very slow, but in the blink of an eye it seemed to be as fast as lightning. Currently, among the 4 great spear arts of Ting Qingshan, transmutation unity law, pursuing shadow, toxic dragon drill, vermilion tiger roar, transmutation unity law would be the most powerful move. I created the first section of the earth element fist. Among the 5 elements of the heavens and earth, I have the highest achievement in the earth element. Ting Qingshan was very clear about his current strength. Just today, he could slap a horse to death without any wounds on the horse's surface. At the same time, he could deliver a shock wave that killed a knight. In the past, he couldn't do it. In the past, Ting Qingshan could deliver a shock wave that killed a person without any injuries on the surface. In the past, he could deliver a shock wave that killed a person. In the past, he couldn't do it. It was because of his current understanding of the earth element that he was able to do it. Most importantly, Ting Qingshan's understanding of the earth element was even higher now. Therefore, his transmutation unity law spear art was even more powerful. It seemed very slow, but in reality it was terrifyingly fast. To be able to do this meant that his understanding of the Tao had definitely increased. Only then could he do it. Phew. Ting Qingshan had achieved such a result. It was all thanks to the battle that gave him the title of demon. More than 16,000 people were killed in that battle. However, the number of people killed in the last hour was equal to the total number of soldiers killed in the first 6 hours. Why was it 6 times faster? It was because at the end, Ting Qingshan had created the 3rd move, and the concept had improved. His speed increased. Right now, among my 4 great spear arts, the primordial unity law spear art is the strongest. In the past, when facing a Golden Dan innate expert, I had no time to defend myself. However, with the creation of the earth element fist, the power of the transmutation unity law spear art had increased by several times. We can definitely block it. Now, Ting Qingshan had the confidence to fight against a Golden Dan innate expert. My internal supreme force is perfectly compatible with my body. Ting Qingshan was very clear that his current physical strength was close to 800,000 jin. When one reached the middle stage of supreme force, the power of supreme force would be close to 400,000 pounds of explosive force. The combination of the two, at least in terms of explosive force, would surpass the opponent. If one reached the late stage of supreme force, the supreme force would be compatible with his body, and he would have a strength of 1,600,000 jin, twice the strength of a Golden Dan innate expert. This was also the reason why Ting Qingshan was confident that when an internal expert cultivated to the late stage of the Grandmaster realm, he would be able to suppress a Golden Dan innate expert. Unfortunately, the internal supreme force and the innate true origin are not compatible. Once the two come into contact, they will fight each other. The strange energy made Ting Qingshan feel helpless. The cold air on the snowy mountain was oppressive, but Ting Qingshan held the reincarnation spear and practiced his spear art. Ting Qingshan did not imbue much strength into each move. What he was experiencing was a concept. Ting Qingshan's ears twitched as he looked into the distance. Chi-Chi, the surrounding snow was trembling slightly. Chapter 271. Although the sky had darkened, the snow on the snowy mountain still illuminated the surroundings. Ting Qingshan, who possessed night vision, was able to see far away. Ting Qingshan's gaze instantly locked onto a huge blurry shadow in the distance. Whoosh! 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 In the blink of an eye, the blurry shadow covered a distance of 100 zhang and rushed down the snowy mountain. This is a snow lion? I can't believe there's such a powerful demonic beast on this snowy mountain. Ting Qingshan was surprised and immediately carried his bag. He chased after it with the reincarnation spear in his hand. Phew! Phew! His figure was graceful. When he encountered a cliff, he immediately jumped down. With my current explosive power, I can suppress a Golden Dan innate expert. But I can't rely on my spirit to eliminate air resistance. Maybe the defensive transmutation unity law can block a Golden Dan innate expert. But my attacking methods are far from it. This snow lion was like a small mountain. With such a huge size, it should be at its peak. A demonic beast comparable to a Golden Dan innate expert. I can use it to test my current methods. His steps were like a shooting star as he chased after the huge blurry shadow. This snow lion is fast. Ting Qingshan started late. Even if he chased at his top speed, he could only close the distance between them. One demonic beast and one human, one in front and one behind, were as fast as lightning. The two shadows, one big and one small, instantly covered a distance of over 10 zhang. In just a short while, they had covered a distance of over 10 li. A huge tribe appeared in front of them. From afar, this tribe was much larger than the Chilean tribe. Inside the tribe, there were piles of bonfires that emitted light. With Ting Qingshan's eyesight, he could barely see that there were many people singing and dancing beside the bonfires. He could also faintly hear the sounds of laughter. This was a tribe that was much stronger than the Chilean tribe and had a much better life. Roar! An extremely excited and wild roar resounded, like a spring thunder on a flat ground. What does this snow lion want to do? Ting Qingshan's expression changed. Demonic beasts had intelligence comparable to humans. They would rarely attack humans for no reason, unless they invaded their territory. Of course, there were a few. For example, the red-scaled beast loved to eat humans. Could it be it's the red-eyed snow lion? Ting Qingshan was shocked. A gigantic shadow the size of a small mountain rushed into the tribe. The yurts were easily trampled by the demonic beast, and many of the yurts were bleeding. Perhaps some families were eating in their yurts when they were trampled to death by the hoof that descended from the sky. It's a demonic beast. Shrill cries resounded throughout the entire tribe. The tribe was in chaos. Amelia! Father! Shrill cries of pain rang out. Roar! The snow lion, which was like a small mountain, let out an excited roar. Occasionally, it would devour the human body. Amidst the terrified screams, the snow lion's huge mouth would directly bite and swallow the human in its mouth. Occasionally, there would be broken limbs and intestines hanging down from the corner of its mouth. Father, father! A cute girl with dozens of braids cried as she looked at the huge demonic beast. Just a moment ago, her father had been eaten by the demonic beast. Let's go quickly. A clansman at the side carried the girl, and quickly ran away. The huge snow lion lowered its head again, and bit a woman who was running towards its child. It bit the woman in one bite and easily swallowed her. "Mother!" The boy wearing a leather hat cried out as tears streamed down his face. A nightmarish scene instantly befell the peaceful tribe. Even the brave warriors of the tribe, who were proud of themselves, completely collapsed in the face of this huge demonic beast. Evil creature! A loud roar suddenly exploded out. Swish! In the distance, a huge rock that was as tall as a human flew across the sky like a meteor. With a shocking speed, it smashed onto the body of the huge snow lion. Bang! The huge rock exploded, and the huge snow lion's body couldn't help but sway. It roared angrily and stopped eating. It turned its head to look in the direction where the huge rock came from. A figure moved like lightning and instantly crossed a distance of several zhang. Finally, it stopped and stared coldly at the snow lion, whose mouth still had blood on it. This snow lion was as tall as 5 zhang, more than 12 meters, and its length was almost 10 zhang. To humans, this was definitely a huge creature. Its body was snow white, and its white fur looked very beautiful. It had a big head, a wide face, a long nose bridge, and a black nose. It also had a pair of short, round ears. Together with its big, bloody mouth, it looked like a lion's face. Its long mane even extended to its chest. The extremely long mane and the pure white mane were very beautiful. On its forehead, there was also a long white horn. Snow lion. In the legends of the grassland, it was known as the holy beast. However, Ting Qingshan, who had read books on demonic beasts, knew that there were 2 types of snow lions. It really is red eyes. The huge snow lion in front of him looked very beautiful. However, that pair of blood-red, demonic, and bloodthirsty eyes made the snow lion look terrifying. Most of the snow lions had golden eyes. However, there was a type of snow lion that was greedy, liked to attack, and liked to eat humans. This was the red-eyed snow lion. The red-eyed snow lion was extremely cruel and savage. If one offended it, it would definitely kill the offender at all costs. At its peak, the snow lion was more than 8 zhang long. Usually, it lived in cold places and could breathe out cold air. It was comparable to a golden Dan innate expert. The bonfire in the tribe was still burning, but many of the tribesmen had already hidden far away. All of them were watching the man and the demonic beast on the bloody ground from afar. The demonic beast was like a small mountain, and it was extremely bloody. As for the other, it was a human. The difference in size was too big. However, in front of the huge monster, the human who was holding a silver spear seemed to have a sharp aura. "Mom, can that uncle kill that monster?" The little girl in the red coat asked softly. Her sad mother only hugged her daughter tightly. "That uncle will definitely be able to kill that monster. He will definitely be able to." The little girl stared into the distance, and her mind couldn't help but recall the nightmarish scene. In the entire tribe, many people were looking forward to the scene in the distance. Ting Qingshan was filled with killing intent. Ting Qingshan didn't have much prejudice against humans and demonic beasts. He could also be friendly to demonic beasts. If someone attacked the snow lion would retaliate. Ting Qingshan wouldn't care. However, the red-eyed snow lion would eat humans even if the human didn't provoke it. Ting Qingshan naturally had killing intent. Of course, if the human killed the demonic beast, Ting Qingshan wouldn't stop him. Because Ting Qingshan was a human. Roar! The red-eyed snow lion roared deeply and stared at the human in front of it. With his intelligence that was comparable to that of a human, he could judge that the power of throwing a huge rock weighing over 10,000 jin was enough to threaten it. It was enough to threaten it. It had to be careful. However, it would definitely kill anyone who dared to offend it. The man and the demonic beast confronted each other for only a moment. Roar! The red-eyed snow lion let out a terrifying roar. At the same time, it dashed towards Ting Qingshan like a bolt of lightning, so fast that it turned into a blurry afterimage. Ting Qingshan stood with the spear in his hand. The red-eyed snow lion used its thick and powerful claws to tear through the air. Accompanied by an ear-piercing sound, it slapped towards Ting Qingshan. Ha! Ting Qingshan dashed forward and stabbed the reincarnation spear in his hand. A head-on collision. Boom! When the two collided, the explosive power of the red-eyed snow lion surpassed that of a Golden Dan innate expert. It definitely had a strength of over 1,000,000 jin. And it was the same for Ting Qingshan. Chi-Chi, the terrifying collision caused the man and the beast to retreat. At the same time, the vibrating space ripples that could be seen with the naked eye suddenly spread out in all directions. Within a circumference of 30 zhang, all the bonfires and tents that were affected were turned into ashes. Even the huge rocks were split open by the vibrations. Terrifying! How is this possible? The grassland people who were watching the battle from afar were stunned. They usually used their sabers to slash each other. However, the vibrations from the man and the demonic beast in front of them could split the huge rocks and turn the wood into ashes. Father, is that a god of heaven? A boy raised his head and looked at his father, and his father also stared blankly. Roar, roar! The furious red-eyed snow lion charged at Ting Qingshan again and again, as if it had gone mad. Ting Qingshan was like a demonic beast as he charged at the red-eyed snow lion again and again. If the reincarnation spear collided with the sharp claws, it would not be able to injure the red-eyed snow lion at all. If I attack carefully, it will be hard to injure it. I have to risk it. Ting Qingshan decided to execute the toxic dragon twist. At this moment, the red-eyed snow lion, who was charging at Ting Qingshan again, suddenly opened its bloody mouth when it neared Ting Qingshan. Phew! A mouthful of ice-cold black mist spread out. Not good! It was too late to dodge. Ting Qingshan instantly withdrew his internal supreme qi and simultaneously formed a light barrier on the surface of his body with the innate true origin. The innate true origin and the internal supreme qi could not coexist. In terms of defense against coldness, the internal supreme qi that could not form a light barrier was not as good as the innate true origin. Chi-Chi, a layer of ice immediately formed on the surface of Ting Qingshan's body. Even with the isolation of the innate true origin, Ting Qingshan still felt extremely cold. No wonder it is a black mist, and so is the purple radiant flood dragon. It is said that even the Golden Dan innate experts would not dare to fight against it. However, the coldness passed through the light barrier. The weak body of a Golden Dan innate expert would definitely not be able to resist it. But to me, resisting the cold depended on the body. When Ting Qingshan encountered the purple radiant flood dragon for the first time, his physical strength was only about 200,000 jin. At that time, Ting Qingshan was able to resist under the cover of ice. This time, even though there was no ice, there was still the light barrier of the innate true origin that blocked off a lot of the cold air. Most importantly, his body was much stronger than it had been in the past. As for the body of a Golden Dan innate expert, it was many times stronger. Not good. The god of heaven is frozen. Is he frozen to death? The tribesmen looked at the scene in shock. If that powerful human died, then they would not be able to resist the demonic beast. From afar, after the huge demonic beast froze, it slammed its claw towards the human. Purring! Before the claw landed, the ice on the human's body suddenly cracked. A lightning-fast punch smashed into the huge furry paw that was slapping down. P.S. 4 chapters completed. Tomato also said some things. A while ago, Tomato's condition was indeed not good. Now, he had already adjusted. He believed that Tomato would definitely write an exciting story. At the same time, Tomato also promised his future updates would be earlier. Every day, the first update would be around 7 o'clock, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. The second update would be around 9 o'clock, 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. If Tomato, was later than 7:30 p.m. on the first day or 9:30 p.m. on the second day, Tomato would update one more chapter to apologize. Every time he updated late, he would add one more chapter. Every time he updated late, he would add 2 more chapters. Everyone can supervise me. Tomato had made up his mind. Previously, he did not canvass for votes for the monthly vote. It was all because he was not in a good state. He did not canvass for votes with passion. Now he had passion. Tomato canvass for monthly votes. Everyone could supervise Tomato's promise. He also hoped that everyone would support Tomato. Previously, the recommendation list and monthly votes list were very low. Since Tomato had promised, he would definitely do it. He also hoped that everyone would support Tomato. He would push up the monthly votes and recommendation votes list. Give all the monthly votes and recommendation votes to the story of the 9 cauldrons. Chapter 272. Phew, the furry claws that were stained with blood also created blade-like gusts of wind, causing the surrounding air to vibrate. The difference in size between Ting Qingshan's fist and the red-eyed snow lion's Tenjiang, 5 meters, long sharp claws was too big. Bang! The small fist directly collided with the sharp claws. The air exploded and the ground below sunk in. The grass immediately turned into dust, and the grass in the surroundings was blown into pieces. The wind was raging. Ting Qingshan and the red-eyed snow lion were forced to retreat due to the rebound force. Cold breath? Ting Qingshan stared at the enormous creature in front of him and became even more confident. The Golden Dan innate experts might be afraid, but I am not. In the blink of an eye, every part of Ting Qingshan's body trembled. Traces of supreme force penetrated his bones, meridians, and internal organs. The cold air in his body was completely expelled. Ting Qingshan's condition was completely restored. Pa! A black axe was also flipped over by the sharp air wave. The axe was the Splitting Mountain Axe. The wooden box and the package that hid the Splitting Mountain Axe were frozen into dust by the black cold air. Of course, the Splitting Mountain Axe fell down. Luckily I used the innate true origin to protect my clothes. Otherwise I would be naked. Ting Qingshan immediately picked up the Splitting Mountain Axe with his left hand and held the reincarnation spear with his right. Roar! The red-eyed snow lion roared softly and looked deeply at Ting Qingshan. The strength of the human in front of it was completely beyond its expectations. Even the cold breath technique couldn't do anything to the opponent. The red-eyed snow lion's human-like intelligence made it understand. It would be very difficult to kill the human in front of it. Even if it succeeded, it would have to pay a heavy price. It was even possible that it would lose its life. Phew! The red-eyed snow lion suddenly turned around and stomped on the grass with its 4 hooves. Without any hesitation, it turned into a blur and dashed towards the southeast direction. Escaping at the last minute. Trying to escape? With the Splitting Mountain Axe in one hand and the reincarnation spear in the other, Ting Qingshan's speed immediately soared. He transformed into an afterimage and chased after them. In terms of extreme speed, Ting Qingshan was slightly faster than the red-eyed snow lion. The sky was dark and the cold wind was whistling. The tribesmen who had been watching the battle in fear looked at each other at this moment. Some were shocked, some were unwilling, and there was also a trace of lingering fear after surviving a disaster. In the distance, there was still a bonfire burning in a place that was not affected by the battle between the man and the demonic beast. That was their tribe. However, the stench of blood that permeated the air caused many residents to grieve and feel fear. Clansmen! The chief of this tribe roared loudly. This disaster was brought by demonic beasts and monsters. However, the great god had already sent his emissary to deal with that monster. Now, those who have lost their loved ones come to me. There were still quite a few people looking towards the southeast. The dark sky, the howling cold wind, made the distance even more blurry. They could not see Ting Qingshan and the demonic beast at all. The god of heaven will definitely kill that monster, a girl wearing a red leather jacket said in a low but determined voice. The man and the demonic beast were both extremely fast. When they rushed out of the tribe, the distance between them was only about 10 zhang. Now, after running for more than 10 li, the distance between them had shrunk to a few zhang. Ting Qingshan could smell the stench of blood on the red-eyed snow lion's body. It was the blood of a large number of humans it trampled to death. Roar! An angry roar sounded. Swoosh! The thick and powerful tail was like a lightning whip, fiercely lashing towards Ting Qingshan. The furry tail was twisted and compressed with a high-pressure air blade. Almost as soon as the tail moved, it reached Ting Qingshan's face. Evil creature! The muscles on Ting Qingshan's left arm bulged like steel bars. At this moment, Ting Qingshan was like a giant that could split the heavens and earth apart. He fiercely swung the splitting mountain axe. Pooh! The moment the tail of the red-eyed snow lion hit the blade of the splitting mountain axe, the entire tail trembled, reducing the force of the attack by more than half. But even so, a large amount of fur on the furry tail that was as thick as a steel whip was still sent flying. You can't escape. Ting Qingshan suddenly groaned and his face turned red. Boom! The power in his legs exploded. With just one step, the ground suddenly split open, and a terrifying trench that was as thick as a water bucket appeared. Ting Qingshan instantly shortened the distance between him and the red-eyed snow lion. This is the time. Ting Qingshan's eyes turned cold, and his body suddenly soared into the sky. Among Ting Qingshan's current offensive techniques, the toxic dragon drill completely relied on his physical strength. As for the vermilion tiger roar, it was a combination of physical strength and innate true origin. But now, Ting Qingshan's internal supreme force and innate true origin couldn't coexist, so he couldn't use them at the same time. The vermilion tiger roar used pure physical strength and innate true origin. The toxic dragon drill, on the other hand, used pure physical strength and internal supreme force. The toxic dragon drill, on the other hand, was even more powerful. Actually, Ting Qingshan's various spear arts didn't have a clear definition of which was the strongest. For example, if one's comprehension of the earth element was high, the defense of the transmutation unity law would be the strongest. Die! Ting Qingshan, who soared into the sky, had a gaze as sharp as a blade. He gathered strength in his right arm that held the reincarnation spear, and his right sleeve was about to burst. Ting Qingshan's face suddenly turned red, and he shouted, "Go!" The reincarnation spear in his hand immediately streaked across with a silver lightning, piercing through the air. Lightning! 2 lightning bolts. One was from Ting Qingshan's reincarnation spear, and the other was from the red-eyed snow lion's tail. As a demonic beast with human intelligence, how could it dare to slack off when Ting Qingshan was chasing after it? Especially when Ting Qingshan's sudden outburst. It made it even more cautious. The red-eyed snow lion was very clear. If it didn't kill Ting Qingshan or severely injure Ting Qingshan, it probably wouldn't be able to escape today since its speed was slightly slower than Ting Qingshan. Therefore, take a gamble. The moment Ting Qingshan used his finishing move, his defense would definitely be much weaker. A silver lightning bolt. Pooh! The tip of the reincarnation spear stabbed towards the red-eyed snow lion and pierced through its fur with difficulty. The spear, which contained an external rotating force and a strange force from the drilling fist, forcefully pierced into the snow lion's body. A white lightning bolt. Bang! So fast. When Ting Qingshan used the toxic dragon drill, he also noticed the tail whipping towards him. At this moment there were only 2 ways. One was to give up on attacking and focus on defending. The other was to attack with all his might and defend as much as possible. Bang! The thick and long tail, while suppressing the splitting mountain axe, still whipped Ting Qingshan's waist. Ting Qingshan felt a sharp pain in his waist, and his whole body was sent flying at an extremely high speed. A force of more than 1,000,000 jin was used on a human body that weighed several hundred jin. In the end, Ting Qingshan was like a cannonball. He was whipped to the side and crashed into the grass. Rumble, the earth trembled, and ravines split open, causing the grass to shatter and overturn. There was a hole in the grass. Fortunately, I have the splitting mountain axe. Ting Qingshan felt waves of pain in his waist. The strength of my entire body plus the internal supreme force is more than 1,000,000 jin. But his endurance wasn't that strong. It was still possible to fight an attack with an attack. If I didn't have the splitting mountain axe, I'm afraid I would have lost my life. The reason why he dared to take the risk earlier was because he had the splitting mountain axe as a shield. Roar, roar, mournful and painful roars resounded in the sky like the roar of a thunder god. Humph, I don't feel good. You didn't feel good either, did you? Ting Qingshan's waist continuously flickered with an earthy yellow glow. The internal supreme force was extremely effective in nourishing and healing the body. However, this time, Ting Qingshan's injuries were too severe. Bastard! Today will be the day you die. When Ting Qingshan felt slightly better at his waist, he clenched his teeth and dashed out rapidly. On the grassland, the huge red-eyed snow lion was roaring in pain. More than half of the silver reincarnation spear had pierced into its body. Fortunately, its body was huge and its skin was thick. Most of the reincarnation spear had pierced into the fur and muscles. Only a small portion had pierced into its body. Even so, the red-eyed snow lion was still severely injured. Phew! Ting Qingshan leaped out from the ground. The red-eyed snow lion immediately discovered Ting Qingshan. Its blood-red pupils instantly contracted. That human was actually still alive. It had risked being severely injured to whip its tail. It actually didn't whip him to death? Even a Golden Dan innate demonic beast would be severely injured. Actually, it wasn't strange. With a body that contained over 1,000,000 jin of explosive force, this body was definitely more terrifying than a body forged from dark steel. Moreover, it was a combination of toughness and softness. How could it be so easy to kill? Roar, the red-eyed snow lion roared. Damn it. I can't kill it, but can't I just hide? The red-eyed snow lion endured the pain in its buttocks and sprinted towards the southeast. Every time it ran, the reincarnation spear in its waist would bring it waves of pain. Trying to escape? Ting Qingshan endured the pain in his waist and withdrew the internal supreme force. Then, he started circulating crossing worlds. Circulating crossing worlds didn't put too much pressure on his body. Whoosh! Whoosh! One in front and the other behind. Both of them were much slower than before. However, the distance between them was still shrinking. Ting Qingshan stared at the red-eyed snow lion. He couldn't give up no matter what. After all, his reincarnation spear was still on the red-eyed snow lion's body. Chi-Chi, the red-eyed snow lion's tail tried to wrap around the reincarnation spear, trying to pull it out from its body. However, the reincarnation spear was stuck in an awkward position. The red-eyed snow lion's tail could only twist within a certain range. The tail had to wrap around the reincarnation spear. It was like a human trying to use his tongue to lick his nose. This was an extremely difficult task. Roar, roar! The red-eyed snow lion couldn't wrap around the reincarnation spear no matter how hard it tried. It couldn't pull out the reincarnation spear. This caused the red-eyed snow lion to roar angrily as it ran. It could only rely on its muscles to slowly move and push the reincarnation spear outwards. However, this was too slow. The pain it was enduring was too great. In the time of 10 breaths, the human and the demonic beast arrived in front of a snowy mountain. Phew! The red-eyed snow lion leaped onto the snowy mountain and stepped on the snowy ground. It seemed very relaxed and agile. Like a cat, the red-eyed snow lion ran on the snowy mountain. Its speed was actually not any slower than when it ran on the grassland. Ting Qingshan's facial expression changed. Not good. This red-eyed snow lion lives in the icy cold land. Running on the snowy ground is actually as fast as running on the grassland. I can't catch up to it on the snowy ground. Ting Qingshan watched as the distance between the two grew further and further. His reincarnation spear was still stuck in the red-eyed snow lion's waist. Was the reincarnation spear going to be taken away just like that? Snowy mountain, snowy mountain. A thought suddenly flashed across Ting Qingshan's mind. He suddenly opened his mouth and inhaled. The surrounding air flowed into Ting Qingshan's body. Ting Qingshan's chest puffed up like a bellow. The internal supreme force also flickered on the surface of his body. Ting Qingshan closed his mouth, gathered his strength, and then opened his mouth. Roar! A thunderous roar reverberated continuously between the heavens and the earth. Rumble! Under the intense vibration, the accumulated snow on the surface of the entire snowy mountain shook. Then, the accumulated snow on the peak of the snowy mountain suddenly collapsed and rolled down. For a moment, the snowy mountain collapsed, as if the heavens and the earth were collapsing. Chapter 273. The entire snowy mountain seemed to tremble in the face of Ting Qingshan's furious roars. Rumble! The red-eyed snow lion raised its huge head and looked at the collapsed snow with its red pupils. It couldn't help but let out a low roar of grief and indignation. Roar! It was really angry. From its point of view, as a noble red-eyed snow lion, it had already retreated and admitted defeat. Why was the human still chasing after it? Rumble! The collapsed snow was like a roaring wave that engulfed the red-eyed snow lion. The enormous body of the red-eyed snow lion seemed tiny in the face of the endless avalanche of snow. The snow was rolling down. The red-eyed snow lion's claws were useless in the face of the falling snow. At the foot of the mountain, Ting Qingshan watched this scene and frowned in confusion. That's not right. The red-eyed snow lion should have leaped up the moment it noticed the falling snow. With the red-eyed snow lion's body, it shouldn't be difficult for it to leap 20 to 30 zhang high. Once it fell, it should have leaped up. That way it could have escaped. Ting Qingshan was prepared to chase after it. Ting Qingshan was confident that he could catch up with it. However, he didn't expect that the red-eyed snow lion would roll down with the snow. Could it be? The red-eyed snow lion was severely injured by my reincarnation spear? It can't hold on any longer? No, if it can't hold on any longer, it couldn't have run so fast before. I can't be careless. If I'm careless, it won't be the red-eyed snow lion that dies, but me. Ting Qingshan leaped more than 20 zhang high. Phew! 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 Like a grasshopper in human form, every time it fell into the snow, it would jump up again and continue to rush up. Amidst the tumbling snow, the huge red-eyed snow lion curled up like a kitten. Its front claws finally grabbed the reincarnation spear that was stuck in its waist. It couldn't pull out the reincarnation spear when it was running normally. However, it could use its front claws when it was curled up. Poochie! The reincarnation spear was finally pulled out. Roar! The red-eyed snow lion let out an excited roar. Its pair of evil red eyes were filled with joy. Oh my God, this thing is stuck in my waist. It hurts every time I run. He was finally free. But immediately after, the red-eyed snow lion's pupils shrank. In the sky above the rolling snow, a figure leaped extremely high and swooped down towards him. Seeing this hateful human, the red-eyed snow lion, who was in a good mood, became even angrier. Why was this human so persistent? Roar! The red-eyed snow lion suddenly leaped up. The man and the demonic beast met in the air above the rolling snow. Ting Qingshan held the handle of the splitting mountain axe with both of his hands. The sleeves of his robe bulged up as he raised the splitting mountain axe high up in the air. Under the reflection of the white snow, The blade of the axe reflected a cold light. Ha! Ting Qingshan's gaze was wild and insolent. With the strength of both hands, he chopped down. Roar! The red-eyed snow lion waved its two huge front claws at the same time, trying to tear Ting Qingshan into pieces. Boom! The splitting mountain axe in Ting Qingshan's hands chopped down on the sharp claws of the red-eyed snow lion. A rippling shock wave was created on the flat ground. Rumble! The surrounding snow was thrown away by the shock wave, revealing an empty space. Ting Qingshan and the red-eyed snow lion were also sent flying and fell down. Ting Qingshan's gaze suddenly locked onto the rolling snow below, onto the rolling silver spear. Reincarnation spear. I can't lose the spear. The moment Ting Qingshan landed, he pounced towards the reincarnation spear. If he didn't take the reincarnation spear now, once it was covered in snow, who knew where the reincarnation spear would be buried? When Ting Qingshan went to take the reincarnation spear, the red-eyed snow lion turned its head to look at him. Roar! Seeing that the human didn't chase after it, the red-eyed snow lion immediately ran away excitedly. Actually, it was a little regretful. If it knew that the human valued that weapon so much, it was afraid that it would have thrown it far away on purpose. The excited red-eyed snow lion jumped a few times and left the collapsed area of the snowy mountain. Then, it sprinted and quickly arrived at the top of the snowy mountain. I finally got it. Ting Qingshan still held the splitting mountain axe in his left hand and the reincarnation spear in his right. You want to escape too? Ting Qingshan quickly chased towards the top of the snowy mountain. In the beginning, it took him 2 leaps and only a short while to reach the top of the snowy mountain. From the top of the snowy mountain, Ting Qingshan lowered his head and looked down. At the bottom of the snowy mountain, the huge silhouette was sprinting rapidly and was about to descend the mountain. The speed of descending the mountain was obviously much faster than the speed of ascending the mountain. It runs really fast. A smile appeared on Ting Qingshan's face. The red-eyed snow lion ran down the snowy mountain and looked up proudly. It even roared recklessly. Obviously, it was showing off to that human. To demonic beasts, only powerful humans could earn their respect. In the eyes of the red-eyed snow lion, ordinary humans were only food. As for Ting Qingshan, the red-eyed snow lion already saw him as a real opponent. Evil creature, you still want to escape? A loud roar sounded from the top of the snowy mountain. Immediately after, this roar descended rapidly. The red-eyed snow lion widened its eyes, which were filled with shock and anger. It saw a black dot descending rapidly from the top of the snowy mountain. That Ting Qingshan actually leaped down from the top of the snowy mountain. Then, like a huge rock, he landed heavily at the foot of the snowy mountain. Boom! The ground split open. However, Ting Qingshan easily leaped out from the crack and stared at the red-eyed snow lion in front of him. Roar! The red-eyed snow lion was truly shocked and angry. What the hell? Even the red-eyed snow lion didn't dare to jump from the top of the snowy mountain that was over 200 zhang high. Actually, it wasn't strange. The red-eyed snow lion had a huge body, but its strength was only over 1,000,000 jin. Ting Qingshan's body was much smaller than the red-eyed snow lion's, and their strength was about the same. It was obvious that in terms of physical strength and endurance, Ting Qingshan was far superior to the red-eyed snow lion. The red-eyed snow lion only had a tough outer layer of fur and a thick layer of muscles to take advantage of it. Moreover, the heavier the body, the greater the impact. The red-eyed snow lion's body was too heavy. If the red-eyed snow lion jumped down, the impact would be much stronger than that of Ting Qingshan. Roar! The red-eyed snow lion spread its 4 hooves and ran with all its might. With the splitting mountain axe in one hand and the reincarnation spear in the other, Ting Qingshan chased after the red-eyed snow lion from behind. Even a Golden Dan innate expert wouldn't dare to do this to a red-eyed snow lion that had reached its peak. Ting Qingshan, who had a strong body, was more like a demonic beast. Therefore, when facing a demonic beast, he had the advantage. Phew. The human and the demonic beast transformed into blurry shadows. This fellow is running faster and faster. Ting Qingshan watched as the red-eyed snow lion ran further and further away from him. Ting Qingshan wanted to increase his speed. However, when he wanted to exert his physical strength, the pain in his waist gave him a headache. The waist was the center of the body. If one wanted to run with full force, the waist was very important. Previously, Ting Qingshan's waist was injured and the red-eyed snow lion had the reincarnation spear stuck in its body. Now, the reincarnation spear was pulled out. The red-eyed snow lion's speed naturally increased. However, Ting Qingshan's speed didn't increase. Therefore, he couldn't catch up. Roar, a proud and excited roar came from afar. It seemed that it was very proud that it had thrown Ting Qingshan away. Consider yourself lucky. Next time, don't let me see you. Ting Qingshan could only snort angrily and stop. He carefully felt the injury on his waist. The internal supreme force hidden deep within his body had a healing effect that far surpassed the innate true origin. Even if it's the internal supreme force, this injury will only be healed after 2 or 3 days. Now I have to choose a place to meditate. Now I have to choose a place to meditate. *********** The next morning, there was still frost on the grass on the prairie. Gusts of wind blew gently, making the place seem very tranquil. Many yurts were not far away. A small tribe was stationed here. Some residents walked out of some yurts. They were already busy preparing breakfast. Suddenly, the ground trembled faintly. These residents turned their heads and looked into the distance. In the distance, a majestic cavalry unit appeared. So many. Are they mounted bandits? Too many. The residents were dumbfounded. They were a small tribe of a few hundred people. If the majestic army in front of them was here to deal with them, they wouldn't even have a chance of survival. Under their gazes, the majestic army passed by their tribe quickly. It's the whole Gale tribe. It's the army of the whole Gale tribe. There must be a few thousand of them. A few thousand warriors wearing armor and riding war horses. Who could make the whole Gale tribe send out such a powerful army? In front of the majestic army, there was a man wearing a luxurious golden fur coat. He wore an iron hat with a ruby embedded at the top. He had a solemn expression as he looked ahead. He was riding on a blood-red war horse. It was one of the 3 dragon horses, the dragon-blooded horse. The dragon-blooded horse was also known as the Scarlet Wind Beast. It was the best war horse in the entire land of the 9 prefectures. Only the black dragon horse, the dark demonic horse, and the white dragon horse, the Pegasus, could be compared to it. Those who could ride on such a war horse must have an extremely high status. Meng Zhen, the man wearing the luxurious fur coat, said. General. Beside him was the leader of the cavalrymen who had besieged Ting Qingshan. How far is the Qilian tribe from here? The general asked coldly. The leader of the cavalrymen said respectfully, General, there are still 400 to 500 li from here to the Qilian tribe. Our army should be able to reach there by noon. Okay. The general nodded and didn't say anything else. The leader of the cavalrymen was very obedient. They kept advancing. Not long after, the general looked at the snow-capped mountains in the distance and exclaimed, The pure white and holy snow-capped mountains. This is the gift of the God of Heaven. We must be grateful to the God of Heaven. We must be grateful and never forget the kindness of the God of Heaven. The leader of the cavalrymen could only agree. Suddenly, the general's gaze locked onto a short snow-capped mountain not far away. On the peak of the snow-capped mountain, there was a figure sitting cross-legged. The wind blew, causing his hair to flutter. However, on the peak of the mountain, in the cold wind, that figure was as steady as a boulder. It seems like he spent the entire night cultivating on the peak of the mountain, just like those cultivators on the God of Heaven mountain. They are all admirable. The general praised. The leader of the cavalrymen at the side also looked carefully. What he saw made him frown in confusion. Due to the distance of 200 zhang, even though the leader of the cavalrymen was an inner strength expert, he could only barely see the figure. Jia! The leader of the cavalrymen urged his horse to gallop towards the snow-capped mountain. The general's expression changed, and he shouted angrily, "Meng Zhen?" In just a moment, "General!" The leader of the cavalrymen turned his head and shouted in surprise, "It's him! That murderer is him!" P.S. 2 chapters completed. Roar roar, today's update time has been kept, the revolution has not succeeded yet, Tomato still needs to work hard. Persevere, persevere. Persevere for a long time. Today was the 28th. There were only 2 days left in this month. If he didn't vote, his monthly vote would be invalid. Vote for Tomato, let Tomato be more motivated. Voting method. Click on the Recommend Monthly Vote Support author at the bottom of this page. Chapter 274. On the peak of the snowy mountain, Ting Qingshan was meditating with his legs crossed. He had injured his waist during the battle with the red-eyed snow lion last night. The internal Supreme Force's healing effect is much better than what I expected. In just one night, he had already recovered 80%. I think I'll be completely fine in another day. Ting Qingshan opened his eyes and looked at the grassland at the foot of the snowy mountain. A mighty army had already appeared on the grassland at the foot of the mountain. They are all top-notch warhorses from the plains, and all the warriors are wearing armor. Even in the land of the 9 prefectures, such an army would be considered an elite army. Ting Qingshan looked at the advancing army and couldn't help but sigh. In the land of the 9 prefectures, it was said that the prairie was barbaric and backward. He looked down on the Great Prairie a little, but Ting Qingshan discovered something completely different along the way. Especially the northern plains. Almost everyone practiced inner strength, and the tribes competed with each other, so there were many strong warriors on the prairie. That's him. The murderer is him. Excited shouts rang out from below. The shouts were very loud. When Ting Qingshan, who was on the mountain, heard the voice, he couldn't help but frown. He realized that the knight seemed to be pointing in his direction. The murderer he's talking about is me? How powerful was Ting Qingshan's eyesight? When he looked carefully, he immediately recognized the identity of the knight. Isn't he the leader of the knights when I was in the Chilean tribe? This army should be the whole Gale tribe's army. Ting Qingshan smiled and shook his head. He grabbed the wooden box that he had made last night and carried it on his back. Against such a large number of elite troops? Even a Golden Dan innate expert could only run away. However, I'm different from a Golden Dan innate expert. Ting Qingshan carried his backpack and walked down the mountain with big strides. My waist injury hasn't completely healed. I can't be bothered with them. On the icy snow mountain. He walked down step by step and soon reached the foot of the mountain. Ting Qingshan looked at the mighty army in front of him and said loudly, "You must be the army of the whole Gale tribe. I don't want to start a massacre today." After saying that, Ting Qingshan walked along the side path and was about to walk past the army. Surround him! A loud shout resounded in the sky above the prairie. Rumble! The magnificent army galloped wantonly across the plains. In front of the magnificent army, the plains seemed to tremble. Aolo! The knights roared in excitement, like wild wolves in a frenzy. Ting Qingshan was just walking normally. Naturally, he could not keep up with the galloping warhorses. Ting Qingshan looked around. He was surrounded by countless cavalrymen. Their silver-gray armors reflected a cold light. The horses snorted and puffed out white mist from their noses. However, all the knights calmly surrounded Ting Qingshan, and no one made a move. "Tell me your name." A deep and resounding voice came from the crowd, echoing across the grassland. Ting Qingshan's gaze instantly passed through the dense crowd and saw the general who was surrounded by people. He was wearing a luxurious golden fur coat and an iron hat. The ruby at the top of the iron hat was especially eye-catching, and it added to the nobility of this general. "Who are you?" Ting Qingshan laughed out loud. As for the army before him, Ting Qingshan only gave them a glance and paid them no heed. "Impudent!" The general's subordinates immediately berated loudly. However, the general stretched out his hand to stop his subordinates and said in a clear voice, "I am Irid of the whole Gale tribe. I respect powerful warriors. Warrior, tell me your name." "Irid?" Ting Qingshan looked at the general sitting high up on his horse behind the dense crowd and laughed. "You have some guts. Let me tell you, my name is Huha." "Huha?" With an expressionless face, the general stared at Ting Qingshan, who was surrounded by thousands of soldiers and horses, and said, "Brave warrior Huha. I respect powerful warriors. However, you killed dozens of elite warriors of the whole Gale tribe. The whole Gale tribe will never let you off. I order you to follow me back to the whole Gale tribe to receive your punishment. I will protect your life. I will let you atone for your crimes with meritorious service. Under my guidance, you will become the bravest warrior under the command of the great God of heaven." A smile appeared on Ting Qingshan's face when he heard this. It was indeed hilarious. Let me become his subordinate? The people of the prairie are cruel and ruthless by nature. They were still very respectful towards powerful warriors. Since I killed dozens of knights, it's normal for them to love me. However, I want to join them. Fight under that general? Irid. Ting Qingshan looked at the general with a smile and said, "I advise you to take your men and go back to where you came from. Take your men and go back to where you came from. Otherwise, it will be too late for regrets." In the distance, the general who was surrounded by soldiers squinted his eyes. "General, this Huha is too arrogant. Only a saber can subdue such an unruly person," the leader of the knights said indignantly. With the strength of the elite legion, even Golden Dan innate experts would have to take a detour if they encountered them. As for Emptiness Realm experts, these knights probably didn't know that Emptiness Realm experts existed in this world. The general, who had been silent for a long time, said coldly, "Take him down." His voice resounded above the prairie. Most of the thousands of people didn't move. Only an extremely small portion of the knights moved. "Oh, interesting." Ting Qingshan looked carefully and saw that there were over 100 knights in the row. Every warhorse was connected by an iron chain, forming a chain of over 100 warhorses. Every soldier held a long spear in their hands. A chain of horses? Ting Qingshan watched with interest as he thought to himself, "Although I don't know much about the horses of the prairie, most of the horses in the land of the 9 prefectures have great endurance and can carry enough goods. Once these warhorses charge at high speed, the force of impact is at least 10,000 jin. 100 warhorses working together? Kill!" A hoarse roar sounded. Slap! Slap! The knights of the prairie whipped their warhorses fiercely, causing the warhorses to neigh and gallop. The 100 warhorses accelerated to a shocking speed after traveling only 20 to 30 zhang. The 100 armored warhorses carried heavily armored knights on their backs. The weight of a single heavy armored knight was almost 1,000 jin. At such a high speed, the force of impact was extremely shocking. Looking at the majestic galloping warhorses that seemed to cause the earth to tremble, Ting Qingshan couldn't help but shake his head and think to himself, "There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you insist on coming." Facing the charging cavalry, Ting Qingshan didn't even think of dodging. Charge! Another order was given. Unexpectedly, another 3 cavalry squads charged over. However, these cavalry squads weren't connected by iron chains. Instead, they were holding up a large net made of ropes as thick as a child's arm. At the end of the net were dozens of large rocks. The rocks were being held by these knights. Ayo, the first wave of knights howled excitedly and rushed over like a monstrous flood. Ting Qingshan looked at this scene calmly. Suddenly, he stretched out his hands. Pooh! His hands were like iron truncheons as he firmly grabbed the iron chains. The chain of horses with over 100 war horses was grabbed at the center, but the other war horses continued galloping with all their might. If it was a hollow Dan innate expert, the galloping force of over 100 top-notch armored war horses definitely wouldn't be able to stop them. However, today it was Ting Qingshan. Ting Qingshan was like a boulder that had taken root under his feet. If they couldn't pull Ting Qingshan, the war horses would be out of luck. Rumble, many war horses were pulled by the iron chains and crashed into each other. Instantly, the men and horses were thrown off their feet. Chi-Chi, the violent impact caused Ting Qingshan's hands to pause for a moment. Ting Qingshan grabbed the iron chains with both hands and shouted, "Rise!" He exerted strength in his arms and swung the chains. One couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. These specially forged iron chains were indeed able to withstand the impact of hundreds of thousands of jin when 100 war horses gallop. Therefore, when Ting Qingshan swung the chains with strength, they actually didn't break. Instead, many war horses with iron chains were flung into the air. Hoo-hoo, at least a dozen war horses with iron chains on their bodies were thrown into the air, neighing miserably. The other 80 war horses were also thrown into the air and bumped into each other. Many grassland warriors were either thrown into the air or squeezed together by the war horses. Everyone was thrown off their feet. Brave warrior! Truly a brave warrior! The general who was watching the battle from afar finally revealed a surprised expression and praised. He should be a true Dan innate expert or a golden Dan innate expert. Powerful, powerful! However, the general didn't panic. Before they came, they had already expected that their opponent was an expert. Therefore, there was a second wave. Throw! An order was given. Immediately, rocks weighing over 1,000 jin were thrown into the air by the expert. Dozens of rocks were thrown at Ting Qingshan at the same time. Immediately, a huge net fell from the sky and covered Ting Qingshan. Throw! Another order was given. The 3 cavalrymen had a total of 3 huge nets. The ropes of these huge nets were as thick as a child's arm. These specially made huge nets were used to deal with powerful experts or powerful demonic beasts. It would be very difficult to break them with brute force. Catch him! The general shouted. As the huge nets were thrown, more than half of the surrounding warriors jumped off their war horses and quickly surrounded Ting Qingshan. He is trapped! He is trapped! The warriors of the prairie roared and surrounded Ting Qingshan excitedly. Ting Qingshan was surrounded by the 3 huge nets. Seeing the countless warriors surrounding him, he smiled and thought to himself, "Ropes? Boom!" Suddenly, a fiery red flame appeared on the surface of Ting Qingshan's body. The innate true origin had different properties. Some were cold, some were hot, and some were corrosive. Back in Yanjiang City, Ting Qingshan killed Tai Wanmao in 3 moves. He used the Vermilion Tiger Roar to incinerate Tai Wanmao's body. One could imagine the high temperature. Chi-Chi, under the high temperature of Ting Qingshan's innate true origin, the ropes that could resist strong attacks were quickly burned and a big hole appeared. "Give it to me." Ting Qingshan grabbed an iron spear from a warrior's hand and poured his innate true origin into it. A red halo appeared on the surface of the iron spear, preventing it from being broken by his great strength. Then, Ting Qingshan used the iron spear as a long rod and started waving it. Phew! He waved to the left. Boom! The air exploded and high-pressure air blades flew everywhere. More than 10 warriors were smashed to death on the spot or killed by the air blade. More warriors were sent flying, and many of them were severely injured by the air blades. Phew! He waved to the right and another group of people flew up. Do you have more people than you, Or do you have more stamina than me? Ting Ching Shan was like a devil as he strode towards the general's location. He waved the fiery red iron spear in his hand, as if he was sweeping the ground, and a large number of warriors were sent flying. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.